I heard that. Hello, everyone. Welcome to FPL BlackBox, episode 76. Mark telling me off straight away because I've labelled the episode wrong. This is what happens behind the scenes, you see. He's just a big old bully behind the scenes, always berating me.
I'm a dictator, aren't I? Tyrant.
You put me in charge, but you're a backseat driver. I will change it, though. It is episode 76. How are you, Mark? Good to see you.
I'm good. Yeah. I'm just really happy to be the passenger tonight. You're driving, your turn. We're going to take it in turns, aren't we, throughout the season? You the host, me the host. Let's see if the listener and the viewer can spot when it's your turn. That's all I'm saying.
Well, with you doing the opening of like you did, I think it's going to be pretty obvious. But yeah, I like hosting. Hosting's fun. It is nice to be a guest, though, isn't it? Sometimes there's a lot less pressure on doing all the tech and things.
It is.
Yeah,
it is. I've got a bone to pick with you straight away, though.
Go on.
You've left the ranks in, right? It's a new season. All right? I know you did well, but putting last season's ranks up, it's just not on, I'm afraid. We got rid of them for the first one.
Oh, did we?
It's a new season, Ash. Just let it go. Let it go.
In my defence, I just put on whatever you sent over to me because you do the little scene transition thing, and you send me that file, and that goes in, and you know I'm blaming you for that. But maybe I just wanted one more reminder of last season. What's going to happen this season? Who's going to win it?
Basking in past glories. Basking in past. Who's going to win it? I don't know. Someone said it was Andy Mack, wasn't it? Said tonight on Twitter. Surely the FPL gods would not let Mark beat beat Mark again. What do you think about that? What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, you've been flip flopping each year, haven't you? So you're due a good season. So I think if I'm going to beat you, I'm going to. I don't know if it's good for us to both have a good season or what. I mean, we can't both have a bad season. That's the main thing. As long as one of us is doing all right, I don't really mind, even begrudgingly, if it is you.
Yeah, that's right. But as you'll see later, I am kind of experimenting this season a bit. I kind of like, well, more on it later, but I kind of just want to try a few things out and... Yeah, you'll see later. No one believes me, do they? No one believes I'm going to do it, but I am going to do it.
No, this is literally music to my ears. In hearing that.
I know. Well, I might be playing into hands, and right now Fabio Borges is probably going, "Phew, I won't need to compete with Mark this season." Like he had to anyway. But yeah, I'm out of the Elite 64 anyway, so might as well. I'm not really under the microscope anymore. I'm more like under the radar, aren't I?
You just need to bounce back. I did straight away. First season, just saying. Begrudging laugh from Mark. We've got an interesting episode today because obviously we covered a lot of stats last week and we've done the retrospectives and everything like that. So we're waiting for next week's going to be big. We're going to start getting some press conferences, start getting the final pre-season games. We're going to get the Community Shield and what happens with that on Sunday. But what we thought we'd do in this episode is this is FPL BlackBox. We haven't really talked about any of the kind of lessons that we've learned, and we do populate this kind of sheet of lessons that we learn from kind of each season, which is the aim of the podcast. And I was looking through them before we came on, and I can already spot things that I'm doing in my team that I need to kind of address. And hopefully it just shows people, some of the mistakes that we make every year, right? And we still get sucked into it, don't we?
Yeah, I think it's important to say, though, these aren't rules, right? We're not telling people how to play FPL, and they're not even rules for us. Like, you can go against these. These are just mistakes that we've made in the last two seasons that we've kind of logged and then wrote up not to do them again. Doesn't mean it's always bad if you go against what we're saying here. It can work. But as a rule, I think what we're going to show tonight is some good guidelines that if you can try and stick to. I think that's probably right. Guidelines, not rules. I don't like rules.
No.
Rules is a bit boring, isn't it? Rules is like,
I think lessons is a good word because they've been lessons for us, right? In kind of, doesn't mean we have to do what they say, but we've been schooled by some of these. I think we've got a story for pretty much every one of these lessons or guidelines that we're going to do. Just before we do that, I just want to talk about, we just mentioned Fabio Borges. I just wanted to mention him again because I've been doing some Hall of Fame stuff for Scout, looking at kind of the top five, and there's been a bit of a shake-up. There's three of last year's top five have dropped out.
Where am I? Like 2, 3, 4?
I can't see you, Mark, on this list. Actually, if you've gone right way down.
You must be a bug in the system. It was. I was sure I was up there when I used to run the thing. But anyway, go on.
Let's see where you are. Hang on, let's have a quick look.
Oh, don't do that. I shouldn't have said anything, should I?
You are.
I'm below Slippers, I think.
You're coming in at 303.
It's not too bad.
Guess where I am?
Oh, you're not above me.
I'm above
If you are, you've just basically made what you're about to say a complete farce, haven't you? Right? Because anything you say about the Hall of Fame now, people are just going to dismiss. I'm only joking.
Luckily, it ignores all of your amazing ranks from your old news now. All your amazing ranks from ages ago. I'm like 250 or something. So there's not much in it between us. But I want to mention Fabio and Finn Solly, because Finn Solly is entering into elite status as well. So Fabio's ranks over the last 7 years, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Do you know what his lowest rank is in 7 years?
What, lowest as in like highest? As in
his worst finish.
His worst rank. Probably about 15, 16,000, isn't it? He's only very rarely come outside the top 10, hasn't he? Top 10k.
His worst rank in 7 years is 4,682.
That's crazy.
He's had had 3 top 1k finishes in that time: 222nd, 95th, 671, and in the other 2, he's finished 1,145 and 1,828. So it's almost 6 out of 7 1k finishes.
What's his best finish?
95.
Did I know? 95. Yeah. Not 42. Then.
Was it 4?
That's about the only thing I've got on him, and it's only a matter of time before he does beat that. Well, because clutching at straws, literally.
He's going to win it. He's going to win it one year. Do
you think he will?
I think
it'd
he
be
will.
Great if he does, because if he does in a way, it'd be like, well, there you go. That proves it, doesn't it? That skill is a factor. But
I want to shout out Finn as well, because in the same period, in 7 years, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, in those 7 years, Finn's worst finish is 21k. But he's had 3 1k finishes in that time as well, coming 39th in 2021, 210th in 21-22, and 410th in 16-17. The other, basically everyone else is kind of flip-flopping kind of in and out. John Canning had a great season last year, came 60th and 184th the season before that, so he's pushed him right up. But there's no one as crazily consistent as Fabio and Finn. I mean, that level is
but are they having fun are they enjoying it really? Do they enjoy what they do they enjoy finishing so consistently high? It must be boring.
It must be, yeah. I mean, just chucking a 200k rank in there every now and then, that's part of the fun, isn't it?
Did they have the kind of enjoyment I got last season with that 156k rank that you've reminded me of tonight so cruelly?
Yeah, you loved it. You were desperate to come on BlackBox every week, if I remember right. Anyway, just thought I'd mention them. Just thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. Thanks for that demoralising mention of people that are far better than us.
Yeah. God, imagine if they did a pod together. That would be... I'll definitely watch that. I'd watch that more than I'd watch this.
Wow.
Right, let's get into some lessons.
Might be fun though, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Would they be having fun? That's the key.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably.
Yeah, right.
Right, lessons learned. Let's go with slide number 1, and these are slides. Start doing a lecture. Do you want to run through these? I know I'm the host, but you're the one that kind of documents these kind of as we go.
Yeah, so. I guess so. And like I said, don't think that these are half-assed rules or anything. We're not dictating things, but there are things that we found. I think, like you said, we've got stories connected to most of these, and we'll probably bring them up as we go. And I think, so this first page is kind of poignant because it's about really the pre-season. It's about the initial lineup. I think most of these they apply. Some of them apply throughout the season, but particularly now when we're just about to pick our initial lineup. And that's what the first one says. Don't be swayed by high ownership when selecting your initial squad. So what we mean there is, I guess, don't play through fear, right? And the classic example of this that we both fell foul of. I certainly did.
I thought he'd be good. That's my defence.
Yeah. Well, I admitted straight away it was purely brief. Yeah, because in this episode, I think the penultimate one before the season started, I was saying how I didn't want to get Timo Werner, right? And when I said that, the reaction, I was like, you're going to pay for that. He's going to absolutely set the Premier League on fire. And I gave in out of fear because he had an ownership at this point about 40-odd%. I think he started the season maybe like higher than that, around 50, maybe even 60%. It was quite high, ridiculously high. So much so that I just couldn't risk going without him. And I regretted it, obviously, as anyone who went with Werner did earlier season. And I even kept faith of him, captained him, I think game week 2 or 3 at West Brom, and he hit the bar. And, you know, I was kind of, every time I watched him, that kind of confirmation bias was like, oh yeah, he's going to come good, because I'd made that mistake and I didn't want to admit that I'd made a mistake because it felt so bad for me because I was on the verge of going against it and not having him. What was your story with Werner that season? Because you had him as well from the start, right?
I did. I was convinced he was going to do well. I think the opening fixtures were quite nice. I think they had Brighton in game week 1. Had Southampton. That was the one you were worried about, wasn't it? You were worried about not having him in place for like one game in sort of game week 5 or 6, like quite far down the line when he was going to be kind of the most captained. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, I mean, this one is interesting because when I've been doing these kind of team reveal, team drafts for Scout, you know, talking to some, you know, like Neil and Obey, who's 50th on the Hall of Fame. Simon March has done one. Like, we've had some really good people. And the guys who are the consistently best people, as much as I hate effective
still waiting for my email on that, but I'm sure it's there somewhere.
Oh, we get enough of you.
I must have missed it.
Backboxing with Andy. Gee, the gods. It's hard enough trying to arrange one bloody call with you, let alone multiple.
Yeah, I'm so busy.
Just a busy man, yeah.
Sorry, I threw you there completely.
That's all right. But they all, I don't like, right, you know, I don't like effective ownership. I like it in the sense that I like going against it. But when you actually talk to these top guys, they do use it. And you've talked about using it as a kind of tool in your arsenal, you know, to you know, and game week 1 particularly. I mean, Gabriel Jesus is the first player that I think, and he has entered into my draft. I said he wasn't in any, I wasn't completely against him. I think he's a good option. But he was the one that I was looking at and thinking that's ridiculously high ownership. And maybe there could be something there, but you know, it is tricky because he is good value. He has got good fixtures, and if you're going against it, you do run a big risk of getting punished really early. So it's an interesting one, this, because I don't want to be swayed by high ownership, but everyone's telling me that I should be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm likely to go in without Salah, Haaland, and Jesus, who are the 3 top owned players.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but just because they're high owned doesn't mean that they're automatically going to, you know, bang. I mean, Salah will score, I'm sure, right? But and Haaland will eventually. But I think he could have a slowish start. But I can't let ownership dictate what I do. Right? Fair enough. If I think Haaland, Salah, and Jesus are best for my team, then I'd pick them anyway, right? Regardless of ownership, I wouldn't look into that really. It wouldn't be a factor. But what I don't want to do is look at my team and then go, oh, I haven't got Jesus, and look at his ownership. I don't want to do that really, because and that's what this lesson's about. It's like don't let ownership sway you from what you think is the best team for you, and that's what I did with Werner. I think I had Danny Ings and Adams up front who started the season pretty well. Danny Ings certainly did, certainly better than Werner, and even Adams did, I think, as well. I had Antonio, Adams, and Ings, I think, as my front 3, and then or maybe 2 of those in my front 2. I can't remember, but I didn't have Werner, and in the end, I ripped my team up to get Werner in, and he flopped massively. And I like I said, what happens then is, like, if you make that mistake, if you go for a high owner, say you get Jesus in and you make that decision not because you think he's the best player for you, but you make that decision because you fear the ownership, right? Yeah. You get him in and he does flop, and then it's really hard to go, I'm going to get rid now, because you know you've gone, oh no, I only got him in because I was scared of the ownership. I only got him in through fear. Yeah. And it's hard to admit to yourself that you did that and change him. So you'll probably end up doing what I did, which is, no, Werner was the right pick, and I'll keep him, and then it does even more damage. So, you know, I guess this could be rewritten by saying, make sure the decisions that you use to base your to build your national squad is based on what you think is best for your team, not on other people have picked him, so therefore I've got to have him.
Absolutely, right? Yeah. I mean, that's the key thing. I think Jesus is not really in the same level for that, because I mean, I look at the forward options and think there's 3 really. There's Haaland, there's Kane, and there's Jesus. Everyone from that is such a huge steep drop off. Werner, I thought would do well. Werner, you didn't think would do well. I can kind of see the logic when it's a 50-50 call and you go with the more highly owned player. I do kind of get that. I don't really like it because I still think you could roll the dice and gamble on it. But I do understand the safety in that. Like, I kind of get it. But to pick a player who you genuinely don't think is a good option just because they've got just because they're highly owned, that to me is, I've said it so many times. I went on Spaces drunk in Liverpool and talked about it. But there is people that play like that. And fair play. And actually, some of the top managers do also play like that. They cover their bases with the high ownership players and kind of try and make the things elsewhere. It's not how I want to play, and I don't think it's how you do either. But it is a strategy.
Yeah, it definitely is. And, I'm sure there'd be some, Fabio may well pick his team like that. He may well go, right, well, I'm not going to go any other players other than ones that have got popular ownership. I don't know. I don't know how he picks his team. Whatever he does works, of course, and it might be that ownership plays a factor. It's just for me, I don't like doing it because I know, and a lot of these are, you've got to learn about yourself as an FPL manager, right? You've got to learn that if you make one of these mistakes, how you react to that. And I know in me, if I make that first mistake, if I get a player in for the wrong reasons, I will not admit that mistake quickly enough, and it will do more damage. Whereas you or anybody else listening to this might go, well, I can pick on ownership, and if it's a mistake, I'm quite happy to fix it straight away, right? But that's not me. I know what I'll do is I'll tell myself, oh no, I've got to stick with it because it was the right call. And that's the worst thing, right? When you make a mistake, you've got to own up to it quick. And that's easy to do when you make the decision based on, I'm not going to go Salah. I'm going to go Son, right? And that's got nothing to do with ownership. I just think it positions me well. It's got to do with the captaincy, right? It positions me well for game week 2 in that I can then make a choice between De Bruyne and Haaland. I can change Son to De Bruyne or Kane to Haaland, or even Saka to Mahrez or Grealish or Foden or something like that, right? So it gives me an option game week 2. Whereas I know if I got Salah in, the only choice I've got for game week 2 will be Kane to Haaland, right? So because I know deep down I'm not going to get rid of Salah, am I? And I don't think many people would if they get him in at the start. And I also know I'm going to end up captaining Salah most weeks if I have him in my team. And I don't really want to do that. I want to be a bit more varied with the captaincy this year. So that might be a mistake. If it is a mistake and I'm in a lot of trouble, I will reverse that and I won't think twice about it. I won't go on for weeks and weeks and weeks. But if I got a player in just for the ownership, I think I would lie to myself and keep going with it. So, that's what I'm talking about.
So what would be the mistake then? What would be the mistake then if Salah gets a hat-trick in game week 1?
I wouldn't change it straight away.
No, you can't, right?
I wouldn't. And I guess it wouldn't come down to Salah's form. It's more likely going to come down to the players I'm getting in and how they perform, really. Because I don't doubt that Salah's going to do really well. I'm not sitting here saying, oh, Salah's not going to be the top scoring player. He probably will be. But I want to play this season where the captaincy is a factor and not like every week. My view is if you get Salah in through fear, you're going to captain him most weeks through fear. So I just don't want to do that. I think last year Jamie Piggott showed that the captaincy, if you come off Salah, if you're brave enough to do it, then you can do well. And I just think myself, the only way I wouldn't captain Salah is to not own him because I would just bottle it. You know what I mean? I'll just bottle it every week. So it's about knowing yourself and how you think, and so you have to kind of adapt your team to that.
Oh, you've gone full FPL Raptor the psychology of Mark Subbins.
Oh well, yeah. Well, my book's out soon.
I think Rashford's the one for me on ownership. I'm seeing his ownership go up and up and up, and he's not someone who I'm going to start with. I don't trust him. I think there's going to be multiple lessons that are telling me not to go for Rashford in game week 1 and 2. Let's go for the second one then. So this one is me. This one is me every year. I think it's 3 seasons in a row where I've made multiple changes to my initial lineup at the last minute to include one player. I do it every year. I panic at the deadline. And I end up taking one player out, and you can see it with the tinkering like I'm doing now, and I'm sure lots of people listening to this are doing. You take one player out, and then maybe you get a slightly cheaper player in, and suddenly it's a domino effect, and like 3 or 4 players go out, and then the game week starts, and all the research you've done, all the planning you've done, all goes out the window because you've panicked and tried to get one player in, and then all the other good players that you've taken out do well, and it just never works out. I'm determined this year not to do it. I want to lock my team in after the team news, and I've got all the information I have, and all my research is done, and then leave it. think a Friday deadline does help with that, actually.
Yeah, I
Fest
think
won't.
I know Fest won't get, drinking at Fest certainly won't help. I think that it's okay if you go into Friday night with perhaps one decision to make, and if that one decision is a straight swap. But if that one decision creates a domino effect where you've got to make 5 or 6 changes, then it's like you've got to be really careful, because then suddenly you're making last minute changes on multiple players, and that's never a good idea. Even swapping one player at last minute, you've got to really think about it. You've got to make sure your thinking is sound, and you've done that. You've gone through those alternatives all through the week up to deadline. I've got a situation in my team at the moment. Well, look, I've got 2 teams later on, and I still don't know if I'm going to go 5 at the back or go with a 4-5.
Same.
So
exactly the same.
So I have got at the moment a decision to make. I'm determined that I come out of the weekend, make that decision on Monday, and then that'll be set, and then I might go into Friday with the choice of a couple of players, but no more than that. I do not want to go into Friday going, still don't know what formation I'm playing, and if I make one change, it's going to trigger 5 or 6, because I think that's not a great situation to be in. So that's the lesson. Try to avoid making multiple changes to your initial lineup at the last minute, just for one player. So if you're going without Salah or you're going with Salah, don't decide, actually, last minute, I'm not going to go with Salah, I'm going to get Son, and then go, right, where am I going to spend $1 million? Oh, to spend $1 million wisely, I've got to change 5 or 6 players. That's not going to be
I remember the worst one for me was a couple of years ago. I think De Bruyne was 9.5, something like that. And I'd been on the FPL show and I was saying he's incredible value. Like, I'm going to definitely start with him. And then I didn't even bottle it. I just took him out 10 minutes before the deadline. I took out some other players as well. And I remember every single one, I took 3 players out. Every single one of them scored. And all the 3 players I bought in blanked. And I was 30 points, 35 points down on if I'd done nothing. And it's just that is such a horrible way to start a season. I know obviously you're going to always have players that you had in drafts and things, but when you've had them in a couple of minutes before the deadline, it's brutal. I just would advise not to do that.
Yeah, and this week, there's going to be 4 weeks in the season where you change your entire team. Actually, there's 5 because the 3 hit as well. And so, it's in any given game week, you've got 1 transfer, you might have 2, you might be taking a hit. So you've got 1 or 2 decisions to make. But of course, this week you've got so many decisions to make. So do not leave many of those to the very last minute. And you might be sitting in now going, I won't. But if you have a change of heart on one player, if that frees up cash, or you've got to free up cash to get them, suddenly it can domino.
Absolutely.
Yep.
A good one next. This reminds me of Pulisic for you, and Martial for you, and probably you definitely fall victim to this one more often than most. Avoid any player who is not certain to start, even if manager comments appear to increase confidence. Now, straight away, I have Mahrez alarm bells with this one. People are thinking he's nailed on. We saw last year that he wasn't, even though he was about the only fit player in the whole Man City side. You've got burnt by this before. I think the manager comments one is interesting, because often a manager will talk up a player who's not first choice just to kind of give them a bit of a boost, even though they're not actually in the plans. What other players do you think this kind of could relate to this season? Because there's bound to be some surprises in the run-ups.
It could relate to Haaland, couldn't it? We could see him on the bench at the weekend, come on, score a goal, and then Pep to talk him up and say that he's ready to start, and then what happens? He doesn't start. Right, so that would be a case of Pep giving an encouraging comment, and even though you see him not start the Community Shield, you think, oh, he's definitely going to start at West Ham. And then lo and behold, what Pep says has no bearing on. He says he's ready to start, doesn't mean he's going to start. That kind of thing, right? Because this is what happened with Pulisic for me, wasn't it? Lampard came out and said, same season as Werner. And ironically, I did well that season. So it was a bad start. But he said that Pulisic is fit. And I think he got an injury in training, did he? It turned out, and didn't play at Brighton. And then he was out for several games. And I started the season with Pulisic as well as Werner. And also, as it turned out, even when he was fit, Pulisic was awful. So
it was
that season. So I think Yeah, you don't want to be taking risks on players that aren't going to start, especially this season, because you look at many squads, and many squads don't even have one sub, do they? You know, they've either got Nico Williams or they've got Andreas Pereira as their first sub. So if you go in with a player who has had injuries or hasn't had many pre-season minutes, forget what you might hear from the managers prior to deadline.
I completely agree.
I wouldn't risk it. And the thing is, that's the thing we do at this stage of the year. We look for any crumbs of positivity about the players we want to get. So, like I say, if you're really committed to Haaland and Pep says he's ready to start, even though he doesn't start on the weekend, if that's the case, you'll go, oh, that's fine, great, brilliant, done deal, because you just want to hear that, right? When there's an alternative like Kane about, you don't really have to take that risk because you can move to him in game week 2 anyway, or even wait longer than that. So, I personally wouldn't do it if there's any doubt. I just wouldn't do it.
Foden is someone who strikes me as that.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been training under 23s. It could be that Pep comes out and says, oh, he's completely fine or whatever. But the fact he hasn't had a pre-season with the senior team means I think he's too big of a risk in that position. So I had another one as well, but I've forgotten who it is. But yeah, I think it's Haaland is an interesting one. And you talk about, if you are going, 4-5-1 or 5-4-1 or something like that, you need Haaland to play, otherwise you don't even get a sub. You've got to have that one striker spot as well. And again, that's another thing that was drawing me towards Jesus. If I did go with Son and Salah, is that if Haaland is to miss out a game, and I've got Archer and Greenwood as my two subs, I need minutes from them, which isn't guaranteed. So it is risky, I think, to start with Haaland as your sole striker when there's Jesus and Kane who are definitely going to play.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Anything else to that?
No, I think it's good. Cool. I think we've done that one.
Yep. So next one, set up your initial squad so you have the opportunity to react to bandwagons at a variety of price points. I mean, this is what a lot of people... Oh, Perisic was the other one I was thinking of. Because, again, he hasn't had much of a pre-season. It could be that Conte comes out and says he's fine. But, again, no pre-season, but there's going to be some worries. Price points. Price points are interesting. There's a lot of talk about the 8 million midfielders because there's so many of them. Kulusevski, Maddison, Diaz, Mahrez, all these guys. I'm wary of going into the season without an 8 million mid. But if you play 5 at the back, it's hard to fit one in.
Yeah, I think what you got to do here is kind of play out some scenarios in your head. Play out some scenarios about, okay, I'm not going in with Rashford. What if Rashford bangs and after 2 game weeks he's going up 0-1, 0-2? What do I do? Can I get him in? And if I need to get him in, how do I do it? And obviously you can do it in 2 free transfers, right? That goes without saying. But ideally you want to set up so you can do it in 1. So I think this is just about having a look at some of the players that you're not going to go with and going, okay, if the worst happens, how can I go to plan B? Can I go to plan B quickly? Does my team enable me to do it? The example being here is if like you go Jesus and you go 2 cheap forwards, or you go Jesus, Wilson and a 4-5, right? And Kane or Haaland take off. You've got to make 2 transfers to react to that. And so don't. I wouldn't do it. With Haaland as a factor for game week 2, it makes sense going with Kane because you can make that swap. If you go with Jesus and a 7.5, it's going to be more difficult for you to do that, right? And you don't want to be. You want to set up so you can quickly move. I mean, obviously you can say, well, I think Jesus is going to do better than Kane game week 1. Fair enough, fine. But what do you really know at this point? Game week 1 is the game week we know the least about, right? So I think it's you take as few risks as possible, says the man who's not going to have Salah, and you set your team up so you can react accordingly, right? So you can react to anyone who takes off because we don't know.
With that in mind, and this is the kind of the thing that I keep coming back to. With that in mind, the most logical formation for me is a 4-4-2. Because you've got the 2 strikers and there's kind of 3 kind of decent ones. We don't know where the value is going to be. Everyone's thinking it's going to be in defence, but equally midfielders could absolutely explode as well. And it lets you react easier. It gives you a bench. It's just the most it's the most sensible play for me. 5 at the back is a lot harder to move into midfield and forwards if a player does explode. If a 7 million mid suddenly comes into it and you've got 5-6 million defenders, how the hell are you going to be able to get into that? How are you going to be able to get Grealish if he looks really strong? How are you going to be able to get Sancho? Coutinho's there as well. I mean, there are options, and the 8 million mids as well. So I think the 4-4-2 with an 8 million mid and some, a couple of Trent and then Cancelo and then maybe a James or even a Dean to cover the 5 millions and then Jesus and Kane. I can see why the template exists as it is, because it's just it's not only good players, it's also quite a flexible.
I prefer 4-5-1 because experience tells me that if there's going to be bandwagons, I know defenders could do. Say Trippier does well. I always say Trippier like he's French or really Trippier. Say Trippier does well against Forest. He could be a bandwagon, but I don't think he's going to go from 5-1, 5-2, 5-3 really quickly, right? Because defenders just don't. They don't. People don't make those moves. But if Rashford bangs, he could go 6-5, 6-6, 6-7, 6-8 within 3 or 4 game weeks easily. Right? We saw it with Calvert-Lewin, didn't we, a few seasons back? He was cheap, started scoring goals, he accelerated quickly, right? And I think I took a hit to get him in. So I think it's attacking players who tend to be the most volatile in terms of the price rises. Defenders, yes, they can be bandwagons, but I think they're not going to accelerate away from your team as quickly as midfielders and forwards can. So I personally think that's why I'm now leaning towards 4-5-1 if I can help it, because then, if there's someone like, there's someone like Gibbs White or someone like that, it's going to be a 5 million or 5, like it could be Bailey. Like, say I don't go Bailey and Bailey scores 2 at Bournemouth, I want to be able to react to go to Bailey. If I've got 4 midfielders and Pereira, I can't go Pereira to Bailey. I would have to downgrade someone who's probably about 7 or 8 million to get Bailey. And am I going to do that? Whereas if I'm playing 4-5-1 and I've got a 5-5 mid, I can come down off that to Bailey or something like that. So think about those players who could. I mean, it's very difficult to anticipate it, but you probably know there's probably 10 players you look at and think they're not in my team. They could do well game week 1, and they're attacking players who could increase in price quickly. I've just named a few. There's plenty out there who are kind of cheap, could do well game week 1, not going to make it into my team. Neto could be one, for example. If you don't go with Neto, make sure you can come down to him, I would say, because going from Pereira to Neto is going to mean you're going to have to either sell your 6.5 midfielder or you're going to have to do 2 transfers. I mean, the
issue with 4-5-1 though is you're going in with Neco Williams and 2 non-playing strikers. So in terms of your flexibility around that, it's really low. I mean, I know we're not expecting the strikers to do amazingly well, but I mean, you've still got Ivan Toney, Calvert-Lewin, Bamford. These guys have done it in the past.
If I've got Kane, I'm not moving off him, am I? I'm going to give, you're going to show patience with an 11.5 forward, aren't you?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying how are you going to get that 4.5 non-playing forward up to, Undav comes in for Brighton at 5.5. Well, you do if they start scoring regularly every week.
I think it's traditionally it's the midfielders that are the ones you go after. Undav would have to do it. Undav would have to do it over a number of weeks before I go, right, I need him.
Do you not hate the idea of 2 non-playing forwards though? Because I do.
No, I don't. I don't, because I just think the value we saw last season from forwards is so low. And like Undav is not. If Undav flies, he's not going to break my season unless he gets 20 goals.
No, I mean, I just think a 4-5-1 gives you, it gives you a Neco Williams, it gives you a Pereira, and then it gives you a punt on like a Greenwood who could get minutes. I think that is kind of, you talk about optimal. That's kind of one of the optimal benches, I think.
4-5-1 isn't Neco and Pereira. 4-5-1 is
4-4-2 is. A 4-4-2 is.
A 4-4-2. Right, okay.
A 4-5-1 is 2 non-playing forwards.
And
Neco, 1 sub. That's my point. A 4-4-2 gives you.
Well, what I'm banking on there is no forward emerging as a must-have bandwagon. And given last season, I think that's a pretty safe presumption.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Right? Yeah, it could happen. Like a bargain forward could go mad, but I think with forwards, you need to see that over a number of weeks, and because they score less heavily than midfielders, you give yourself time to do it. With a midfielder, if Gibbs White gets 2 goals on the opening day and he plays up front in the false 9, you're going to want to go for it, right? If Undav scores for Brighton and Man United, you ain't going to think, I've got to do it. You might do on a Gibbs White, would you? Okay. On a Gibbs White at 5-5, playing up front for Wolves, I'd go, got to get that player in, because he's going to play up front for 8 or 9 weeks. He's getting 5 points for every goal. and he's getting clean sheets. Whereas Undav, okay, he scores at Man United, but I'll give it another 3 or 4 weeks. I think that's just my view anyway. I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, the forwards were so bad last season that it's hard to imagine them being a factor. But it was only the year before that we had Calvert-Lewin and Bamford, who were absolute like essential players in our teams. I mean, remember Calvert-Lewin's start that year? He was getting a goal. He got what, 7 in a row or something, or something crazy. Bamford getting 200 points. I mean, I'm not saying it's like to happen again. I think we can only go with the kind of knowledge that we've got, which is the forwards are pretty dead in the water, but. Yeah. Anyway, I think 4-4-2 in terms of flexibility is the best. But
yeah, I mean, you've got to nail your colours to the mast. Yeah, I got it right this year. This time with this show, you've got to choose what you want to do, haven't you? I'm choosing to back the midfielders. You're saying you want to remain flexible and be able to react to
you'll see my teams in a bit. I do like 5 at the back as well, which is completely the most inflexible. I think I'm looking at a 5-4-1, which goes against everything that I'm saying on this. Maybe I need to add this as a lesson.
Well, there you go.
Already, yeah.
Yeah.
You talked about defenders sort of being less volatile and easier to kind of get on, unless you get like a Lundstrom, a 4 million defender who scores game week 1. I almost think I want to jump on that because I've been guilty of missing out on those points. Wan-Bissaka a few years ago, people who, if you've got Pereira and we see, another 4.5. I mean, there's De Silva, isn't there, of Brentford? He looks like the kind of the other one who looks quite decent. I want to kind of get that spot locked in quite early because it's such a key thing to have a decent sort of 4.5 million option. But generally speaking, the defenders do go up less quickly. The other point is be mindful that high scoring and cheap attacking players will be served to offer the most value on the game weeks. And again, I think there's so many players that could apply to. You talked about Neto, Martinelli, Odegaard is someone we're going to talk about in a bit. I think he could be an absolute bargain this season. 1.5 less than Saka. Been really impressed with what I've seen from him. Rashford as well. If he does start strongly, if Rashford gets a goal against Brighton, I completely agree. He's going to go up in price a lot. Yeah. So you have got to react quickly to these. Yeah.
So I mean, this scenario, if Rashford and Martial score, right, which one are you most likely to want, Rashford or Martial? It's going to be Rashford. Yeah. Again, that was my point. It's like there's something about the midfielder option that makes you think that's the one I've got to go for because there's that extra value, perceived value.
My camera's going a bit.
Doing it again, yeah. You kicking your cable?
I'm not doing anything. I don't know why it's doing it.
Oh well.
I think it's getting a bit hot. Yours doesn't seem to. It's only just started doing it.
Podcast listeners are enjoying this bit anyway. So, but yeah, I mean, I think it is. For me, I think you're less likely to panic about defenders. Basically,
it's really scatting out.
You'll have to edit this bit out of the podcast, won't you?
Well, you say I will. You will.
I will.
Yeah. You do the uploads. I'm just going to check my. I'll set you off with the next one, then I can have a little play around.
I'll ramble about it. Yeah, you're back now.
I'm back now. I'm still doing it.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is. Yeah. So consider for game week 1, our knowledge and intel is at its weakest. So prioritise proven picks and teams that could offer a degree of reliability. I mean, we all get excited by new shiny things, don't we? Like it's just, and that's Haaland is such high ownership and Kane is so low. We talked about that kind of last week. But yeah, it completely is. And I think this season, we don't need to take punts on kind of new. It's not like we've got quite exciting options from crap teams. Like we've got good, cheap options from like the top teams as well. So there's going to be a lot less risk taking, I think, in people's sides.
Yeah, and there's a lot of presumed knowledge. I mean, we add to that. I mean, we look at last season's data, don't we, as a guide to help us pick game week 1. But really, this is when data is the least relevant to our decisions because it's a whole season back and everything changes over the summer. Tactics, managers, players, so much fitness, so much changes in the break between the season end and the next season start that it's very difficult. Well, you shouldn't be taking data and going, right, I'm going to base my decision on this data because that data is at its weakest or the data you've got is at its weakest. And then really it takes 3 to 4 game weeks before. And even then, you can argue the sample size is too small. So if you're a manager guided by data, which I am, it's very difficult. You know the least, and so you've kind of got to go on a little bit on reputation. And I guess you are still going on data, but you're going on data not just from last season. The season you're going for several seasons. So, for example, I'm back in the City and Liverpool defences, right? Because I think I'm going to go in with 2 from each. Now, that's not using last season's data. In a way, you can say it is, but it's kind of it's using what I'm thinking is common sense, as in the 2 best defence are very likely to be those 2 teams, right? It could be that Chelsea creep in there or Spurs, but I would have thought at the end of the season or mid-season or any point in the season that we grab data, Liverpool and City will probably be the top 2 defences. So, you back them, right? Back Liverpool and Chelsea defences. Don't go with a team that has no City defender or no Liverpool defender or just one of those things. I wouldn't. I'd try and go as heavy as you can on those 2 defences, because of all the things that you can rely on, the Liverpool and City defences are probably 2 of the best things we can rely on with no data and no matches played, I think. I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, I think a great example of that is the kind of the Robertson over Diaz kind of quandary that a lot of people are having. I mean, we aren't really sure what this new look Liverpool side is going to look like. We know that there's going to be rotation across that because there's 4 or 5 players for those 3 spots. And you know what you're going to get with Robertson. You know you're going to get a player who over the season is going to get close to or even break 200 points. And we're not... I mean, we all know Diaz is a good quality player, but we don't really know what his FPL pedigree is like, because he didn't hit huge heights when he signed in January. His underlying numbers were okay, but didn't indicate that he's going to get like near to Salah, for example. He's not going to be a captain option for people who are like you, who are thinking of going without him. But you know what you're going to get with Robertson every week. So for me, this rule does apply to that. I think it's... I mean, I've got the 2 drafts I'm going to show later. I've got one with Diaz and one with Robertson, but really, if I'm picking one of those 2 players, and it's not as easy as that, don't get me wrong, because there's formations and structure and everything like that, but I'd pick Robertson any day over Diaz.
Yeah,
if it was purely say it was a draft, you could pick one. I'd definitely be picking Robertson.
Yeah, I mean, I think Diaz is picking a Liverpool attacker has a certain amount of reliability as well, right? Liverpool are going to create chances, and as long as you're getting someone who's going to get minutes, that's okay. But I don't think a Liverpool attacker is as assured as a Liverpool defender now, or probably most of the season. You'll always back Salah over a Trent or Robertson for the captaincy because of the ceiling. But in terms of reliability, arguably, I put this to you, Trent and Robertson are probably more reliable than Salah right, in terms of return.
No. It's those clean sheets. Those clean sheets that Liverpool just get and grind out every week. I mean, Cancelo as well could be someone who really does start entering into the captaincy decision next year.
And this isn't... We're not saying do that all season. We're just saying start like that and then change it up. And again, we go back to last episode where we said it's quite unique this season and that we've got that unlimited transfers between 17 and 18. Which means we're not going to push the first wild card late. We're going to try, I imagine, and play it as early as we can within reason. So therefore, that the team you're picking now is going to change in 4, 5, 6 game weeks, maybe only 3, 4 game weeks. I don't know, but that. So you're only kind of going with reliability for now. You can change it up when there's data in, and then you can go Diaz over Robertson if you really want.
I mean, the danger is, and it goes back to the earlier lesson that we had, is that if Diaz gets off to a strong start, he's going to be 8.5 in a few weeks. Whereas we're not going to see Robertson going up to 8 million. I wouldn't have thought. No. So,
but if you start with a Mount or Saka, you can make that move quickly, right? That's the idea.
Well, you can't if Diaz goes up 0.1 in the first couple of days. That's the thing with the 8 million bracket, isn't it? Or if one of your players goes down, if you get the wrong one, say you get in Maddison and he blanks against Brentford and Diaz and Mahrez both score game in 1, you're going to have to make a decision very quickly whether you want to make that switch.
Yeah, but at least you can make a decision without taking a hit. Right? Yeah. Saturday or Sunday night, you're in a position to do that if you really want to.
But then it's difficult.
Whether I would make an immediate swap, I don't know.
It's tricky because then if you're planning on doing the Kane to Haaland swap, suddenly you'll have to take a -4 just to block it out. It's a tricky balance. And the other team I want to mention here is Man United as well. So we are seeing investment in Martial, in Rashford. No Fernandez. I don't see any Fernandez in anyone's draft. He's a bit too expensive. Dallo is creeping into quite a few drafts as well. Do you think this kind of feeds into this lesson? Is that we just don't really know what we're going to get from United? Okay, the signs have been decent, but would you be surprised if they got turned over by Brighton in game week 1?
No, I'm not going in on United yet. Dallow's tempting. If I was going to go a 4-5 defender, Dallow probably looks to be
I
in
think
the
so
reckoning.
as well. Yeah, I think he's
Yeah,
probably the
so
best. Him or Justin.
I think that. Yeah, so I think that's okay, or Brighton maybe, or Dunk. But I do think there's an element of doubt over Rashford, Martial, and Sancho, right? So for me, they are players to consider with the wild card rather than players to go with game week 1. How much damage are they going to inflict if you don't go than game week 1? Yeah, they could. I mean, I guess they could all do massively heavy damage, but Ten Hag's impact would have to be pretty extreme for that to happen, really. And obviously, other players would have to struggle for you to want to get a Rashford in or a Sancho in. I guess Saturdays, the last friendlies could change minds a bit, but I still feel United, the jury is out on them still. I think that's the status that I'm giving them. And if the jury's out, then I'm not going to go in on game week 1 with them.
Well, it feeds into the next one. Be wary of teams in transition who have made wholesale changes to key positions or the spine of the team. I mean, they haven't really made... Pogba's gone, obviously, but a lot of the team is kind of the same. I mean, Ronaldo potentially leaving or not playing is going to be a big transitional change for them, but we think that's probably going to be for the best. But they are definitely a team in transition, Man U. No one knows what we're going to kind of get from them. I mean, the biggest team in transition, though, you're wearing their T-shirt. I mean...
Yeah. But then they're not a team we would rely on anyway, are they? Because they're a promoted team. So I think any promoted team counts as a team in transition because they're new to the Premier League and they've got to adjust. And we don't really know how any of them are going to fare. I think Forest will struggle initially anyway because we've got so many new players. So... I would have thought Fulham and Bournemouth will feel out their first few fixtures. Well, we've seen teams like Norwich absolutely fly from the off. So it really depends on the mentality of the manager. And Marco Silva could tell Fulham to go out and attack Liverpool in the first game week, and we might see Liverpool concede and Fulham give them a game. You never know, but you never know is probably the right phrase. We just don't know. So I don't think... like I said earlier, if you think, I'm going to go Mitrovic, so I'm not going to get Kane, so I'll go Jesus and Mitrovic, you are putting yourself in a position where you can't react to either Kane or Haaland doing well without taking a hit. And I think that's not a great situation to be in. Again, it's about looking at the players that you're going without and how likely they are to damage you. And obviously, if you're not going Kane, Son, De Bruyne, Haaland, these are all players who could do a lot of damage in a short space of time. If you're not going Rashford, Neto, Sancho, how much damage are they going to go? How much damage are they going to do? They'd have to be a massive sea change in their output for them to really hurt you. So that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, and again, it's kind of like if you genuinely think United are going to hit the ground running, under Ten Hag, and now's the time to. Because I'm considering Sancho, for example, because I think there could be a bounce, particularly early on, and that kind of thing. It doesn't mean we're not saying don't get them. We're just saying, you have to be aware that it could backfire massively because we've seen it before. I mean, two teams in which have lost key players is Brentford, losing Eriksen. I think that massively impacts on Tony, and Brentford have had a poor pre-season. So has he. I don't even think Tony's scored, has he, in pre-season yet? Or at least he hasn't been doing well. And Brentford don't look quite right. As they all right, get him in bandwagon. And the other team is Leeds, right? Leeds losing Calvin Phillips. That's got to be the biggest. You talk about a spine of a team. That's about the biggest loss you can get. So the people consider.
Well, I'd say Chelsea as well because in defence,
losing Rudiger. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think there are teams that they're talented teams with talented players, but I want to wait and see. And even Chelsea, I'm not going to go James or Chilwell. I did think about it. But they haven't got Koundé now. He's gone to Barcelona. So I don't know what they're going to do at the back. Are they going to play 4 at the back for a good while before they switch to wing-backs? Looks that way. And so that's put me off, right? That's put me off going any of their defence. And Leeds, I think Leeds have got some good players there. I think they should be all right this season. But they're going to take time to bed in, aren't they? I don't think Jesse Marsch is going to know what he's going to get in the first few game weeks. So we shouldn't bank on it either.
Cool. I'm just going to turn these ranks off. I think we've punished you for long enough. So I just turn those
so you do know how to turn them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Just put them on out of choice. Yeah. So that claim at the start, I just did what you gave me.
I just did what you said. I just did what you said. Although I can't work out how to take the arrows off. so they might have to stay on there. So I've got a green. You've
No,
got
you
a red.
can't. You can't.
No, there you go. Perfect.
Yeah, maybe that's. Here we go. Maybe that's
I'll put the ranks
quite
back
meaningful.
On then. Looks a bit weird with just the arrows. Put them back on.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to lessons learned too. And just at this point, if you are watching, we've got 1,200 people watching live. The chat is booming,
fantastic,
which is awesome. If you are enjoying this stream, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. We're getting more views than we do subscribers, so that's not right. So if you could please subscribe to the channel and help us on our way to 30k, that would be amazing.
Because we are going to do some match of the day challenges and stuff, and impromptu stuff.
Yeah.
We might only do it once or twice in a season.
Maybe we just go live. You won't even know.
It.
You only know.
Yeah, imagine that.
Yeah.
We might just do that.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah. And obviously, like the stream, there's 177 likes with 1,200 people watching. So if you could all just click the button and just press the like button right now, we would really appreciate it. It'd be amazing. And the other thing is, I've had a lot of people asking about the league code, which is now on the screen. We've updated the graphics a little bit more as well. I think they look really nice now. I'm really happy.
Thanks to Lynn for those, by the way.
Yep, they look great. I like the fade and stuff. It looks really nice. But the league code is, and someone did message me and said they couldn't quite work out my pronunciation. So I'm going to be really clear here. It is.
I couldn't, to be honest, when I was trying to get it off the podcast.
Really?
Like, what was it? I had to play it 4 or 5 times. Yeah.
Okay, it is 3V7D Q9. We're happy with that?
Yeah, that was very good.
Thank you.
Very clear.
I would do it phonetically, but I don't want to mess it up and embarrass myself, so I won't.
Yeah, and you do that thing that Arthur, Roger, Foxtrot, whatever. I always start that like with someone on the phone. I always go, so it's S, and then I forget the actual terms for the letters. And then I go N for noddy, S for sugar. And I'm like, what am I doing? It's like anyone from the army hearing me would be like, oh, Jesus Christ, I can't stand that. They just make it up as they go along. N for noddy.
N for noddy is amazing.
And sometimes if I'm frustrated with the other person on the other and I go, I for idiot, like things like that. And I think they get the message. So.
That's so good. Yeah, I mean, that's even more embarrassing than not trying at all. I think that's about as bad as it gets. Okay, so do you want to go? You can take these. I kind of ended up taking over the last page. You can take page 2.
That's all right. Page 2, then these go beyond the initial lineup. So be mindful of swapping failing heavy hitters too soon. Consider their fixture-proof qualities. There's no comma in there, bad grammar. But I think this harks back to the Son 4 goals at Southampton. If you remember that season, and again it was that season where we went Werner. There was a lot of managers who started Son and Kane, and then they didn't do very well in that first game. I think it was Everton at home, if you remember. Spurs won 1. Spurs lost 1-0. I think Calvert-Lewin scored, and they lost 1-0. Spurs, and they looked pretty dreadful in that first game. And then a lot of people who were on Kane and Son just immediately got rid because they were like, well, Spurs didn't really look like scoring goals, and I need to get rid of these players. And then in the next game, Southampton away, Son and Kane went absolutely mad, and I didn't have either of them.
Me neither.
But then I didn't start the season with either of them either, so I didn't feel as bad.
And you still had a good season that year. I don't know how you managed it.
Yeah, I know. It sounds like that was a disastrous start, wasn't it?
It was a disastrous start.
Yeah, well, that was Jesse Lingard, wasn't it? Yeah. Jesse and Gundogan saved it for me. But yeah, so I think my answer is like, say for me, example, right? If I don't go Salah, I've changed it. I'm wavering already. If I don't go Salah now, if I don't go Salah and I go Son and Kane, which I think that's what I'll do, and then Son and Kane play Southampton, and there's 1 assist or something, or maybe they both blank. I'm not going to give up on them. I'm not going to go, well, that's it. I'm going to get rid of both of them for De Bruyne and Haaland, right? Because they could go to Chelsea and do really well. Fixtures look against them in game week 2, but Chelsea's defence in transition, and Spurs went to City last year and scored 3 goals. Let's face it. So Son and Kane are players that are fixture proof, right? They proved it. They went to the Etihad and Kane got 2 goals, and I don't know how many Son got. I think Kulusevski got a couple of assists. Spurs are a team who can go against fixtures, especially away from home. The way Conte sets up. So just don't give up on those heavy hitters. You didn't get them in for 1 week, or maybe you did, but think about it before you get rid of them, because obviously the elite players can do it against anyone. So be very careful about moving off them.
Well, yeah,
quickly.
and I mean the other thing as well, which is what puts me off, is now putting me off the Kane to Haaland swap, is so much can happen in game week 1 as well, that it's almost a luxury move to change out a heavy hitter for another one when you might have other fires to put out, or there might be a bandwagon that emerges, which is why I'm really not keen to book in that early transfer of Kane to Haaland, because I can't see any way, unless Haaland is injured, I can't see any way in which you're not going to captain Haaland in Game Week 1. I mean, maybe you could go for De Bruyne instead.
In Game Week 2.
In Game Week 2. It's got to be, you've got to captain a Man City player at home to Bournemouth.
Yeah, but
it
could be anyone. If Mahrez starts Community Shield, if Mahrez starts at West Ham and does well, why wouldn't you get Mahrez?
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I don't think there's a massive gap between any of the City assets. If you said to me, Mahrez is going to play 5 games back to back, Haaland's going to play 5 games back to back, and De Bruyne plays 5 games back to back, I don't think you could be absolutely certain which one of those 5 is going to get the most points, because Mahrez's points per 90 is actually really strong. So, those 3 players, if you knew they were playing, I don't think there's much to separate them, but there's a lot to separate them in terms of price. So, I think it's quite difficult with City to pin the tail on the donkey with, this is the player that's going to get me loads of points. Obviously, with Liverpool, it's Salah normally. There's not another attacker that you'd back at the moment. You wouldn't put a captaincy on Diaz, and you wouldn't necessarily feel like you have to get Diaz in like you would Salah. With Spurs, it's Son and Kane. It's easy, right? Those are the players to back. With City, we think it's Haaland, we think it's De Bruyne, but it could easily be Mahrez, Foden, or Grealish as well.
Yeah, I think
we'd have to see.
I would put De Bruyne and Haaland in the bracket of Salah and Kane and Son in terms of the most likely players. Yeah, absolutely. Foden, Grealish, Mahrez aren't going to get close to De Bruyne and Haaland this year.
I don't think they're... well, Haaland we don't know. Right? We imagine Haaland will be as reliable as Salah and Kane and Son, yeah. De Bruyne, I don't know.
I think people are sleeping
explosive.
I think people are sleeping on him, and I can kind of understand why, because Son and Kane and Salah are so interesting. But that's one of the reasons why I was considering a Son and Salah draft, was maybe thinking of moving Son over to De Bruyne rather than moving Kane over to Haaland, because I think De Bruyne could be an absolute monster now he's fit.
Yeah. I think if I move to a City player Game Week 2, I want to give myself all 3 options. I want to be able to go, I could go Saka or Diaz to an 8, or Foden, or Grealish, or Mahrez.
It's a very good point.
Kane to Haaland, or Son to De Bruyne. I can do any of those 3 moves, or I could do none of them. Like, what if they don't play well at West Ham and Bournemouth get a 0-0 in their first game and look really defensively sound? You might go, maybe City are only going to win a couple 2-0. Or maybe Pep takes De Bruyne off after an hour. Then are you going to captain De Bruyne Game Week 2 against Bournemouth, where he might not even start? If lots could change your mind.
That went terribly for people last year, didn't it? When he didn't play, and then
what was that?
He didn't play. He didn't play, did he? The first game after the Champions League, when lots of people bought him in, and then he got 4 goals the week after in double game week.
That was last year. I don't know. Well, yeah. I mean, obviously that can go against you, but that's really bad luck, isn't it? That's extreme. Those extremes might not happen again. We saw a lot of that last season.
Better not. I can't handle that pain, especially not live on bloody stream.
But I don't think. I mean, we're sitting here now going, it's absolutely nailed on. We'll want a City player against Bournemouth. Things could change. Definitely. And yeah, I think I would be probably more inclined right now to go Son to De Bruyne. But then I haven't seen Haaland play against Liverpool in the Community Shield yet. Maybe that will inform the decision more. But right now, I would probably back De Bruyne over Haaland, because I haven't seen City with Haaland yet. So,
yep. You can carry on. You can do this.
Next one. Don't let potential price drops be too powerful as a tiebreaker for transfers. Right. So I do this. I didn't do it last season. Last season was probably the one where I paid the least attention to price drops and price rises. But what I tend to do sometimes, and this is me as a manager, this might not apply to you. You might go, well, I never let price drops or price rises affect my transfer decisions, but I do. I could be sitting there on a Sunday night going, right, shall I wait till Friday, or shall I make the transfer now because, I don't know, Mount's dropping and Diaz is going up, for example, right? Now, I'd have to be absolutely convinced that Diaz is going to do better for me than Mount. Because often what I would do is go, I'm not utterly convinced, but can I afford to let the price drop hit me? And then, you know what I mean? I let that fuel my decision making so much that I end up forgetting the fact that actually Mount's a good player and he could do just as well if not better. So that's what you got to be wary of. Like, obviously you want to be aware of price rises and price drops, but also be aware of how much they're affecting your decision making, and make sure that they don't be too powerful in weighting your decision to go for or against a player, and crucially when you go with that player, right? Often I've moved for a player because I think they're going to get a price rise or a price drop. They don't get a price rise or a price drop, and you make the move anyway. And then you think, oh my God, I really hope I've made the right decision now. And the reason why you're thinking that is like, you've made that decision when you did, just because of the price rise or price drop. I do it at least once or twice a season. And then you're sitting there through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday thinking, God, if there's team news on Friday that player I bought in is a doubt, and I bought them in on Sunday or Monday night because they were going up 0-1 and they still haven't gone up 0-1, you feel awful, don't you?
It's one of the reasons why I hate the start of the season, particularly the first few weeks, because not only are the price rise sites completely unreliable a lot of the time because they haven't got the data to know which threshold it's going to meet, but also every 0.1 is almost like a 0.5. Because we talked about the 8 millions, and if one of them goes down or up, how much more difficult it is to move. It's the same with the 4 million defenders. That's where I've been priced out of getting like a Lundstrom or something, because I can't move my 4 million defender up to Lundstrom when he's 4.2, 4.3. It means I've got to move one of my other defenders down, and then you're making a defensive transfer. It's a really, really tricky thing at the start of the season, and it can make or break a lot of things. But I think you're right. You've got to the patience. When you're talking to the big names like the Fabios and the Finns and everyone, they all say consistently the same thing. They ignore price rises. It's the main consistent bit of feedback I've heard from pretty much every top manager. You've always kind of every time I've listened to you, going back to the Scoutcast years, you've always been the kind of the one that goes against a lot of these things, and you play very emotionally and stuff, and still do really well, obviously, but. Talking generally speaking, the advice from the very top is be patient, don't take so many hits, and ignore price rises. That's just what you consistently hear.
I mean, I having said that, right, I do think locking in value and trying to get on value, trying to get on risers and get fallers.
That's always been a big part of your game, isn't it? Because you talk.
It is, but. It's a difference when it depends on the weighting of that in your decision making. Like, if it's a player you really want, say for example, I don't have Mount, I go for Diaz, Mount scores 2 at Chelsea, and I really want Mount, right? That's fine. I can make that transfer, and obviously I'll look at it and go, I better do it now because Mount's going up. Fine. But what you don't want to do is look at the price rises and fallers and go, I wasn't thinking of getting Mount for Diaz, but now I see Mount going up and Diaz going down. Suddenly I feel like I should get Mount. So that's where it's wrong. It's like, it's okay if you've already made that decision for the right reasons, as in, I want to get Mount, he's got good fixtures, he scored at Everton, Diaz looked disappointing, I want to swap Diaz for Mount. And then you go, let's have a look at the price. Right? Oh, look, Mount's going up on Monday night, I better do it quickly. That's fine. I don't mind that. I think that can work, right? But don't do it. Don't look on Monday night and go, I was kind of thinking about Mount, but now I see him going up. Maybe I need to make that call now. Yes, I do. Yes.
We're all guilty of it, though.
You know what I mean? Yeah, I know we are.
Yeah,
I know. So it's fine to chase value. It's fine to move players out who are going down the value. I'm a big advocate of that. But do it for the right reasons. Don't do it just because of the value.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, well said. It's got almost like a kind of ownership, another debate, isn't it? You get a player in because you fear the ownership, but you also get a player because you fear that he's going to go up too much and you won't be able to afford him. It doesn't always mean he's the best player to get. Bandwagons can happen to crap players just as much as they can happen to good ones.
Yeah. And the other thing to think about this season is we've got that wild card that you can play early. You can play in Gameweek 2 or 3 if you want to.
Yeah.
So I don't think we have to get too carried away with price rises and falls in the first couple of weeks, because you know that in 3, 4, 5 or 6 you're playing that wild card. And because there's Nico Williams at 4 million, there's Andreas at 4 or 5, there's Patterson at 4 million. There is value there to be had. So you can let players go up a bit. You don't have to panic too much because you know you can get a decent side out and there's value there you can get to accommodate the rises a bit. That's why, as long as if you're looking and going, I'm not going to play the wild card to 9, 10 or 11, then it's a different story. But I don't think many are going to be looking at it like that.
Yep. Well said. I think I'll take the next one because I think this one applies to me. I think it was probably the main conscious thing that I did last season to actually finish quite high. And I mean, it's easy to say when I got off to a pretty decent start and kind of kept on from there. But my main thing was not just to chase shiny new things that cropped up one week, and it was really to look at who are my worst players in my side, who are my lowest scoring players, who are the ones with the worst stats, who are the ones that aren't playing or getting benched, and just take those guys out and just make sure they're the ones going, not taking out the guys that maybe have had a bit of a blip but are still doing okay just because I want someone who's suddenly like emerged. When you've got crap players stinking out your team, you need to move them out. And that to me was probably the main thing that I did, because I've been too guilty of just leaving them in and hoping that they'll come into some kind of form even though the signs weren't there. Yeah,
and that's it. And it's like sometimes you like it's like murdering your darlings, right? It's like you could be really proud of a decision. You're going to go, I'm going to go for Bailey because I really think he's going to fly out the blocks, and then he blanks the first 2 or 3 games, or he doesn't start game week 2, and then you think, oh no, I don't want to admit that was wrong. I'll hold on to him, and instead of getting rid of Bailey, I'll get rid of another player.
He's only 5 million, something like that, and then you end up playing.
He's only 5 million. Yeah, so I'll get rid of one of my 5 million defenders. I'll get rid of, I don't know, Zinchenko because he's playing left back, and you do that instead of getting rid of Bailey when Bailey's not even starting for Villa or reliably starting for Villa. That kind of thing. Whereas Zinchenko starts every week, Arsenal can keep clean sheets any week, and any week now he's going to move to midfield, right? That kind of decision would be wrong because Bailey's your weak point. You get rid of Bailey, right? Don't be too wedded to that decision. And it sounds obvious, doesn't it? Get rid of the players who aren't either, aren't reliable starters, have an injury, are injury doubts. So why would you make your transfers elsewhere on your team? Often you do it because you go, no, I really want to get Rashford. And I'll take Martinelli out to get Rashford, even though Martinelli's playing every week. Yeah, okay, he might have blanked the first 2 games, but I'll take Martinelli out. And there sitting in your defence is a player on a yellow flag who won't even turn up.
Yeah, exactly.
But you'll still do that because you really want Rashford. So you'll choose your transfer based on the player you want, rather than choosing your transfer on the player you need to get rid of. And that's what you should try and make sure. You can do it sometimes, but make sure you're checking yourself when you do that.
Check yourself. I like it.
Check yourself.
Nice.
I shouldn't have done that, should I?
Yes, you should. I think you should do it again multiple times.
No, I'm not. If I do that whilst wearing J-Ling's merchandise, it'd be wrong. I'm not wearing J-Ling.
Oh, you've got to buy your top I pick for you for next festival.
Yeah, they've out of stock. It's very low stock. I've tried.
You can't back out of that now. If you back out of that and you go for Salah, you're not allowed on the pod next year.
I've tried emailing their customer support, but I'm not getting the answers back. So it's looking ropey at the moment.
All right, I'll buy it for you. You can pay me back.
Yeah, it's even worse.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, move on swiftly on. Yeah.
You can go.
Okay. Don't underestimate form opportunities as a reason to play the first wild card.
Less of a thing this season, maybe though.
Yeah, it probably is. But it might not be. It might be like, say for example, I'm sitting here thinking I'm going to play at 5 or 6, probably 6, between 6 and 7, right? But what if there are 2 or 3 players flying out of blocks, looking great form, and I go, no, I'm not going to play the wild card now because my team looks all right, and I'm going to play it in 6, so I'm going to stick to that. But just because your team looks all right, if there are players absolutely flying, sometimes it's best to move. Right? Depending if your rank, you might have had a really good start. You're in the top 100k after 2 or 3 weeks. Don't sit and think, oh, actually, I don't need to change anything. You might not need to, but just do check that actually are there opportunities still here on form players. And I go back to, I think it was Josh from Always Cheating, played his wild card brilliantly a couple of seasons back when Kane and Son were on fire, if you remember, when Jose was manager. And they started it was after the 4 goals at Southampton that Son got. Kane and Son were linking up brilliantly. I was doing well. I think I was ranked fairly highly, but Josh was even higher than me. I think he was doing well that season. And he still played his wild card because he looked at his team and thought, even though I'm doing well, and even though I look at my team and I haven't got many changes to make, I think Son and Kane, I need to get on them. And he got on them, played the wild card, and they went to town.
Do you remember where we were when we heard that?
we were on the FPL show.
And we laughed at him.
And he came on the FPL show live from America, and he said, I'm going to be playing the wild card. And we looked at him.
He doesn't need to play the wild card. His team
look at
looks
his team.
fine. What's he on about?
He's just shoving off,
Yeah.
right, basically. That's what we thought. And he actually said, no, I want to play it from a position of strength. Because often we play the wild card in panic mode, as I'm doing really badly, got a lot of players that are rubbish, need to play the wild card and get it out there. Well, that obviously is the default way of playing the wild card. But if you're doing well, don't necessarily write off the wild card as an option. Don't necessarily go, well, I don't need to play the wild card, so I'm going to save it to 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Particularly this season when you know you can refresh your team between 17 and 18, right? So if you get off to a flyer, consider using it off from a position of strength like Josh did, because it can really work as well.
Yep, nice.
Okay, that's that one. You go to the next one. Go on.
Can we do the next one? Monitor your risk taking and don't be driven to take risks by emotions of disappointment and or frustration. I mean, I am so bad with this. I think we're both very emotional FPL managers, aren't we?
Yeah.
Both of us. I think in some ways, I think that's why people like watching us, do these streams and do match of the day and things. But it definitely does drive decisions. When I'm watching something and I'm so down by a certain result or a certain player scoring that I don't own or my captain blanking, you just always want to just do something about it, don't you? I can't go through that again. That was absolutely horrendous. And this is where again
I did it last season.
Yeah, is where ownership again plays a big part, because when you get punished by a player who's owned 50-60% of the game, you just want to get them in just so you're not punished by them in the same way.
Well, last season I jumped on Lukaku, didn't I? And jumped off Torres, right, famously. But I also played the wild card to get Foden off the back of his performance at Brighton. So twice last season, I can point to me reacting and taking risks based on emotions of disappointment or frustration. Like, I think the Lukaku one wasn't so much... Well, I guess it was disappointment because I got Torres in for the first 2 game weeks. And City beat Norwich 5-0. He played and he didn't get anything.
Oh, you got Lukaku because you were trying to be way too clever.
No, but that contributed to it, though. Had Torres got me something against Norwich, I don't think I'd have done it.
Really? Yeah, maybe.
No, I don't think I'd have done it because I would have gone, well, Torres is definitely going to start in the next game against Arsenal. He's just scored against Norwich, so I'm going to keep him. So I would have looked at Lukaku and thought, oh, I really want to get him in. But I probably wouldn't have done it because I wouldn't have wanted to get rid of Torres. But because Torres got me nothing against Norwich in a 5-0 win for City, when I saw Lukaku played Arsenal, and I thought, I really want to get Lukaku. And when I looked at my options to get Lukaku in, it involved selling Torres. I didn't even think twice because I thought, well, Torres just played in a 5-0 win. What's he going to get against Arsenal? He's not going to go to town against Arsenal, is he? He just got nothing against Norwich in a 5-0. And what did he do? He got 18 points.
All I could say is thank God you did take him out because that made that match of the day episode.
It did, mate. It did. But that is where frustration played into my decision making. Yes, the overriding thing was I need to get Lukaku, definitely. But definitely the frustration with Torres also played into it as well. And I didn't think, oh, got to be careful here. I'm reacting in a negative way to Torres off the back of 1 game or 2 games where he's blanked, right? Yes, it was Norwich. Yes, it was 5-0. But I should have thought to myself, Arsenal are no great shakes. And, they just lost to Chelsea and Lukaku played well, ripped them apart, didn't I? I didn't think that's Arsenal are rubbish, so I need to keep Torres. I thought Lukaku's brilliant. I need to get Lukaku when it should have been the other way around.
I still can't believe you moved heaven and earth for Lukaku. He had Liverpool, didn't he, in the game you got him in?
Don't know if he did. He
think
might have done. Yeah, he did. He did Liverpool away, yeah. James got sent off as well, didn't he? I had Reece James. He got sent off.
What a day.
But the other one was Foden. Foden at Brighton. All season last season, really, he didn't look like he was going to be consistent. He didn't look like he was going to be a must-own. Then at Brighton, he put on a really good show and he got quite a lucky couple of goals. I think one was a deflection. The other one was a decent goal. And he played really well and he played in the false 9. And I looked at that and thought, I've got to get Foden. And getting Foden meant I had to play the wild card. And I played the wild card and it was an absolute disaster, that wild card. Because I played it game week 10 and And I think we saw a couple of episodes ago, it was myself and Matthew played our wildcards in Game Week 10, and we both plummeted after that because it's just the timing of who you got at that time. So, yeah, I made 2 big mistakes there off the back of disappointment and frustration. I was frustrated. If you remember, weeks before, we had that argument about, is it Foden, is it Jota?
I know, they're both rubbish.
I backed Jota, and you backed Foden.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that Foden did brilliantly at Brighton and made me think, I've got that wrong. Me backing Jota over Foden, got that wrong. And the frustration of that meant I had to get Foden. And I didn't realise what was playing a part in my decision making, and emotions of the emotion of frustration and disappointment that I got that wrong. I'd gone for Jota, not Foden, was feeding into the decision, and it was a wrong one. And so you just got to just check when you're making a decision, what's feeding into this? What are the things feeding into it correct? Can I trust them? And twice at least last season I didn't.
Check yourself.
I'm not doing it again. Not doing it again.
When selecting risk, prioritise going up against effective ownership rather than against expected points.
Yeah. So I see this as, I like taking risks, but I think I like to take risks more often with EO than with backing a bad player or a player that's not proven. So what I mean by that is, I'll go Son rather than Salah game week 1. I don't know what the ownership is of Son really. I haven't even looked, but I imagine it's lower than Salah.
20%, 25%.
It's not really playing into my thinking. It's more about, I'm doing it mainly, like I said, because of the captaincy and flexibility game week 2, really. But that's an example of, you're taking a risk because you're going against EO, but you're not taking a risk on a bad player. Son can do wonders in any game against any opponent. If I was going, I don't know, let's think about it. If I was going,
I think Diaz over Salah for like a captaincy is probably a good example.
Yeah, to an extent. I'm talking more about transfers, but I guess it works with the captaincy as well. Yeah. If you're gonna move off Salah for the captaincy, you'd go to Kane or Son or De Bruyne or Haaland, wouldn't you? Players that are proven to be at his level or near his level. You wouldn't necessarily go down to
that contradicts the next point, but
go on then.
Well, check beyond the obvious captain pick to test if there are any. Oh no, it doesn't contradict because
safe elite player.
Yeah, safe elite player. Sorry, I'll read it again. Check beyond the obvious captain pick to test if there are any safe elite player opportunities to bet against the favourite option. Yeah. I mean, elite player is kind of a bit vague, I guess, but I guess it doesn't just constitute premiums. It also constitutes players. Kind of. I mean. Maddison was the first player that came to my mind, but can he enter into that bracket of, if Leicester have got a great fixture and he's on all the set pieces and Leicester are playing well and his underlying stats are good, does he then go into that elite player bracket? It's not just a punt, right? You're not just punting on like
I guess
Brennan
not.
Johnson,
I guess not.
But it's not just premiums, right?
No, I think there'll be times in the season where a player like, we saw it with Lingard and Gundogan, didn't we? Right. Sometimes a player that you wouldn't necessarily go, well, they're an elite player, hits a run of confidence. I won't say form, but hits a run of confidence where suddenly you think, well, they could score in any game, and they've scored in the last 4 or 5, or they've returned in the last 4 or 5. So suddenly they are a captain option. But it only happens with a few players a few times. Most of the time, the captaincy, you're going to go to one of the elite players, one of the proven players from past seasons, one of the players can deliver double figures on a consistent basis, that has got a good fixture. Sorry, I should have edited that out as well. Tried to hit the mute button and didn't work. So Game Week 1 is a good example. Kane and Son play Southampton at home. Now, normally you'd go, well, they're brilliant captain options. How far behind are Kane and Son at home to Southampton compared to Salah at Fulham? What's the gap there in terms of the captaincy? We'll go back to the chips thing. Remember the thing we did? I'll give you 10 roulette chips. You can put some, you can split them.
Oh yeah, we started doing that last season, didn't we? Then we stopped.
We'll do it now, right? You've got 3 options. You've got Son, Kane and Salah. Where would you put your 10 chips? Would you put all 10 on Salah? Probably not. Would you? What would you do?
I'd probably put 6 or 7 on Salah. Six on Salah, 3 on Son, 1 on Kane.
Right. That's what I mean, right? So there you look at it and go, now normally in most weeks, you'd probably put more than 6 on Salah. You'd probably put 7 or 8.
Yeah, it's true.
Maybe even 9, right? So in the weeks where you're going, you know what, I put 5 or 6 on Salah, you've got to think, hold on a minute. That means there's an option where I'm looking elsewhere. Do I need to look harder at that? And that's the weeks where you go, yeah, actually, to gain more rank, I'm going to take that risk. And it's not a big risk because you're saying to yourself, I'm giving this player 30% chance of scoring better than Salah, right? Which is what you just said there. You're giving Son and Kane 40% chance collectively of doing better than Salah.
I mean, it's a very interesting because, I mean, the first example that springs to mind is the whole fiasco of Salah and Havertz last season. I mean, if you'd offered me roulette chips then, I would have probably have gone 60-40 Salah and Havertz because I really did think Havertz was going to benefit from that.
It wasn't a wrong call.
No,
the output was terrible, absolutely disastrous. But Chelsea won. Well, they win 8-0 against Norwich.
Yeah, Mount.
Yeah, and he got nothing. So I still
only
look at
outfield
that.
player to get no points. Yeah,
I still look at that and think that wasn't a wrong call. It was just incredibly unfortunate, and it wasn't the only time that happened last season. As we said, it was. I still think it was a season of extremes, and we won't see that to the same extent this season. But those are the weeks where I think, look at the favourite for the captaincy and go, right, what percentage chance would I put on one of the other players outscoring them? And most of the time when you've got Salah, you very rarely, you often go, well, 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10, right? You'll back Salah every week, right? That's the problem with owning him. It's not the problem with owning him, but it does narrow your decision maker when it comes to captaincy. You're very likely to go to Salah. But there are some weeks when it's 60-40 or even 70-30 when you think it's worth considering. Yeah. If the alternative is a player like Kane, Son or Haaland who, could easily outscore him. Yeah. I wouldn't do, like you say, Salah to Maddison in any other week. Maddison would have to be in very strong form and Leicester would have to be...
I mean, I definitely look for opportunities with the captaincy. I mean, I did captain Salah in that United game, but only because I wasn't really convinced with anyone else in my side. That was the week, wasn't it? Lukaku got injured in the Champions League. I can say with 100% certainty I would have bought in Lukaku, captained him at home at Norwich, if he was fit for that match. And he could have got 4 or 5 goals. You never really know, but to beat Salah's 24 or whatever he got in that match would have been almost impossible. But I do like to look at fixtures in which, okay, Salah's playing Man City at home. He could get something in that, but really, what are the odds that he's going to get 15, 20 points? If he does, fair play. But are there other options that people aren't really considering because it's just such an obvious, boring move to go for Salah? That's definitely why I like to do the captaincy. But it's becoming increasingly more difficult because Liverpool and City are just so far ahead of everyone else.
They are, but Son and Kane are the exception, aren't they? They are players who, for me, it doesn't matter they're not playing for City or Liverpool.
They were at the back end of last season. I mean, my sense is that Spurs are going to be stronger this year, but I don't have that trust in Spurs as a team that I do as I do with Liverpool and City.
I think not a lot. I mean, if you're saying things have changed at Spurs, you kind of think things have changed for the better. So while I said earlier you can't base anything on last season's data, Son and Kane are seasoned Premier League players who are good performers in any season. What we saw last season was they got better in terms of output under Conte, and if anything, Conte has added to his team and made him stronger. Yeah. So I don't think it's, even though you can't go off what we saw at the end of last season, I don't think it's a massive stretch to say that Kane and Son are a good bet.
Can they eliminate losses like to Burnley or to Brighton? Those kind of 1-0 losses, 2-0 losses where they just don't really show up. The signs are they will, because I think Perisic is a great signing. I think Richarlison gives them more cover. They're just stronger, aren't they, in every department? So it's going to be interesting. Don't underestimate the eye test as a method of identifying opportunities that statistics or models are yet to respond or adapt to. Bet people were wondering how long it would be till I brought up Bruno Guimaraes, but that was purely off the eye test. And I do think, like, obviously there's the grass FC and analytics stuff that goes on, but I strongly don't think you can completely rule out the eye test and look watching games and seeing what I mean. The stats pick up a lot of stuff, touches, heat maps, everything, but sometimes you can get more from watching the game than you can purely just from the stats. Stats don't always tell the whole story. So I definitely like to supplement it with the eye test. I mean, to be fair, I mean, we talk about kind of ridiculous examples. I can't remember any eye test decision going as well as that did for me that week. But it's definitely something that I use a lot. I like to watch as many games as possible and use the stats to kind of supplement it.
Yeah, and there are some players as well that you watch and you know from how they're performing, or even their body language, that they're either on or off form, right? So, Jesus' data.
Seb won't be happy.
Yeah, well, Jesus' data will probably be strong as always, right? Because it was at City, and he has looked confident pre-season, and so I do think that he could start the season well. It's not enough to make me want to change my formation and structure to get him, because I want to get either Kane or Haaland, right? So I wouldn't do it, but he's one player who, at the moment you think he's playing with confidence. The finishes that we've seen pre-season, smile on his face, etc., etc. He's going to start every game. You can't just go off the back of data with these players. Kane is another one. Like pre-season, he looks like he's lost weight. He looks in trim. He's way he's sprinting, the way he's wanting the ball. He's another player you can watch with the eye test, and you not even think of the data, but just
it's off the ball.
Play.
It's off the ball stuff. And someone just mentioned in the chat, Ti, for Dennis versus King. That was a perfect example, because you were never sold on King. You were very much like Dennis is the better player here, and that was I think one of the classic sort of analytics versus grass. I mean, in the end they were both pretty useless.
Yeah, Dennis got sent off, didn't he, a few weeks later?
I think Dennis was winning the race by a bit and then got sent off and ruined a lot of people's weeks. But
I mean, Lingard and Gundogan, right? Those two examples from the season I did well were both eye test, right? They had nothing to do. I mean, data in the end for Gundogan, because we did that episode, we said look at the data behind Gundogan as well. Look at how he's getting chances in the box and so on. So data, it's a combination. I'm not saying you do everything based on the eye test. You do everything based on data. Just don't underestimate. Don't look at data only and go, well, I haven't watched any matches. I haven't seen this guy play, but the data says he's doing really well. Check him playing as well, right? Because there could be reasons why the data is showing what it is. It could be that, like he's just been fortunate to get into those positions and have those shots, and he's not actually playing well or with any confidence.
No, it was the key thing with Mahrez, that in the games that I saw, he was willing to lay the ball off in midfield and get forward, and another player that does that every now and then, when you can kind of almost sense when his purple patches are coming, is Maddison. Because Maddison can operate at a very deep lying role and be happy spraying passes and stuff. It's when he sprays it and gets forward, that's when you know, okay, he's on it this match. And if that happens consistently, he can have a season like he did last year, where he's absolutely fantastic.
Robbo 8ball saying eye test confirmation bias. Yeah, you've got to be careful of that as well. Don't do what I did last season, watch Lukaku in one game go, he's a world beater, bring him in. And right? So you can get it wrong as well, right? You can be too... That was a case of me going right behind the eye test with no data and going, I've got to do it. So don't do that. But it's a balance, isn't it, between the variables that feed your decision making. And what we're saying here is, don't underestimate the eye test. Don't play it down as well. I've seen the model. I've seen the data. I'm going to go off the back of that. Yeah, he didn't play well in the last game. In fact, he hasn't had a good game yet this season, but the data says go with it. Bring in the eye test as well, because that might be the tiebreaker in your decision. Lingard's a very good example. Like if I see Lingard playing that first game at Newcastle, he looks super fit and he's playing with a flourish, he's trying tricks and looking confident as he did in that first few West Ham games, then I'll be thinking, right, I don't care what the data says, I want to be getting Lingard. It doesn't work with every player, but there are some players that you learn over a period of time that how much weight to put on the eye test.
Vardy's another one as well. I mean, when his XG was really poor and he barely any touches or shots in the box, but you just watch him and you see his intelligence of how he kind of hangs off the last man and makes those runs, and you think, the stats can't really point to that. How that intelligence of knowing exactly when to run, that's not going to come out in numbers and stats. It's you get that from watching it. Yep.
Yeah, and we forget these players are just human beings. Like, they're affected by off the pitch stuff. We don't know that stuff. No model can know what's going on off the pitch for that player. You get clues on his confidence and his mentality by watching them play. Right, that's the only place you can go. Is this player happy? Is he confident? the only way you can deduce that, if you can anyway, I mean, arguably you can't, but the only guide you've got is by watching them play. And with some players, the signals, the tells are more obvious than others, right? Yep. And we just listed some, and that's what we're getting.
A player that I really want to watch before I make a decision on is Grealish, because I think Grealish has the potential to be an absolute bargain at 7 million. But I owned him a lot last season. I watched him a lot last season, and when he's playing that far wide, he just isn't threatening. He takes up some quite good positions, but there's always a player in front of him, or he's getting the ball too wide and not really influencing the kind of the central areas. If that's going to change next season, we're going to see him coming inside a bit more. He's a player that I want 100%.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing with Grealish for me is he playing that role where he's just playing out wide, he's attracting the two players to create space for Cancelo or somebody else, right? Whoever's left side. Because I imagine Grealish will be left side. That's what I fear Grealish was used for last season. Is he going to be removed from that role this season? Because, that obviously creates space for others. Grealish does do that because he attracts defenders. The minute Grealish gets on the ball, defences go, we've got to get to him with more than one player. And obviously Pep likes that because it creates space. If we see that again, if we see that's the role he's got, he isn't going to get returns because he's 4 or 5 passes removed from the goal. He's not the one providing the assist. So that's the problem with him, I think.
I think if Cancelo moves over to right back, it might free up Grealish, depending who kind of comes in. But he kind of has to cover, doesn't he? Because Cancelo bombs forward so much and likes to cut in and shoot. It pushes whoever's out on the left a bit wider. So if Cucurella does come in and nails down left back spot, then maybe we'll see a slightly different role for Grealish. I don't know. It's kind of a wait and see type thing, and we'll know pretty quickly, I think, what his role is. We're going to do 2 hours again, Mark. We've done an hour and 32.
Yep, we are. Last one then, and this really applied to me last season, and I'm making sure I'm not going to do it again this season. Don't set long-term plans that could box in your thinking, even when chips or double game weeks are involved. Always try to remain agile with your decisions. So last season, classic. Just one of several mistakes I've talked about tonight. Last season, I went for that tactic with the chips where it was, I think it was it wild card? Free, I can't remember the order of the chips, but basically
wild
I booked
card,
in
free hit.
No, wild card, bench boost. I don't know.
Whatever.
I don't know, but I made a decision to go, right, this is the way I'm going to play my chips in this order. And I'm going to stick to that plan because that gives me some advantage. Because I think I can't remember the order of the chips that
it was definitely wild card then free hit because it was the blank.
It was the wild card, and I wild carded to Arsenal because I thought they were going to get the double game week, and as it turned out, they didn't get the double game week. Chelsea did. You played the free hit in 28. You reacted to the Chelsea double game week. You got James in, and he went mad at Burnley. If you remember, right?
I do.
And I couldn't do that because I'd already played the wild card and I'd already booked in the other chips. So I'd put myself in a situation where I couldn't react to the fact that Arsenal didn't get the double game week, Chelsea did. I couldn't react to Chelsea because my team wasn't structured in a way I could get James in, couldn't get Havertz in. And I think those who did really well. And that was all because I decided on my strategy, and that strategy was based on around 4 or 5 game weeks in a row. So I was kind of long-term planning, and the way I play FPL is I love to think I've got a master plan. I've spotted something that nobody else has spotted, and this is going to work brilliantly for me.
Lukaku hat-trick against Liverpool.
Yeah, I mean that was less long-term. That was more opportunist, but so I know that's the kind of manager I am. So I've got to put this as a lesson so I don't do it again. So in a way, I'm saying it now in that I'm going to play the wild card 5 or 6. Now, although I'm saying that, if I think I need to play it in game week 2 or 3, I will do it. I'm not going to go, no, I've decided to play it in game week 6 and I'm not going to change my mind. That would be doing what I'm saying here. That would be committing to a long-term plan and then not staying agile, not making short-term decisions because that long-term plan is in place and you don't want to break it. I think that's a big error.
Actually,
and it was seen at its worst last season.
Yeah, actually, I'd argue that the Lukaku move was that because it was a long-term move in the sense that he had bad fixtures and you were getting him early, and it meant that you were boxed in because you weren't going to get him in for like Liverpool and then Arsenal, whatever the next game was, and then sell him before the good fixtures. You could have given him those 2 games, been flexible about it, then change your mind.
Yeah, could have done. Yeah, I I thought to myself, I'm going to get him in now because everyone's going to want him. And if I get in early, that'll give me an advantage because while they're doing things to get Lukaku, I'd have already got him and I would be ahead. Exactly what I mean. That was me going, aha, a potential plan that could get me an edge on everybody else. I'm going to do that. And I committed to it. And
it just looks so good when it comes off, though, doesn't it? That's the key thing.
Well,
and so bad when it doesn't.
I guess that's it. You know, I think I am the type of manager to want to do that. I will go for the Hollywood pass, if you like. It's like if there's something that looks to be high reward, then I'll talk down the risks or ignore the risks, and I'll frame it in a way to go for the high reward option. Yeah. And you know, that's just me.
That's how I want to play, though. That's how I want to play, though. Like that kind of like, just because we're looking at these kind of lessons and talking about it doesn't mean I want to lose that sense of adventure with transfer, because that is FPL for me. That's the only reason I play it. If it was just robotic, pick this player and go with that, it's that's why the eye test is important. That's why I like to, you know, try and spot something that someone else hasn't done. But I do think with the long-term planning, FPL just doesn't lend itself to that level of scrutiny to a long-term plan. You have to kind of remain flexible. It's good to have a plan.
Well, it didn't last. Yeah, it didn't last season when COVID was about as well. No. And that was a silly thing.
Yeah.
And if you remember, it caught me out the season before last as well, where I went bench boost. I saved the bench boost for the Leeds double game week, and the Leeds Burnley fixture was postponed due to COVID, and I was left with Leeds against Brighton, and they lost 2-0, and it was dreadful. And you said that. So, like, again, I'd committed to a long-term plan, went with it, and it was a disaster. You know, so I think anything which means you're going, well, I'm going to do this in that game week, then in game week, 3 game weeks ahead, I'm going to do this. It's like, don't commit to that.
Amazing. That's it. That's all of the lessons. I thought we'd get through those quite quickly, but in typical Black Box fashion, we haven't. Should we look at some team drafts?
Yeah, I think that's good though. I really enjoyed that. And I think like if you're new to FBL, I mean, there won't be many people watching, I don't think, in their first season. But hopefully there was something there for people who are seasoned players. But hopefully as well, like if there's people watching who know people who are new to FBL, link them to this, because I think there's some stuff there that could help them. I think there's some stuff there to reassure them that even people like us who've played the game a long time make those mistakes.
So many mistakes. Yeah. Your first team or mine? Who do you want?
Go with yours first. I think that's what we traditionally do, isn't it?
Okay, so this is my 4-4-2 draft, which I've actually been on for a little while now. So I've swapped out Raya for Sanchez. So Sanchez is now my preferred 4.5. I think nice and dull.
Sanchez, oh my God,
oh yeah,
dearie me.
I mean, it's Sanchez or Raya. I'm just a bit worried about Raya's appeal, given that Brentford have been terrible, and this new goalkeeper who's actually supposed to be really. I think he's from Lazio. He's supposed to be like absolutely excellent. Yeah. So. Yeah, a little bit worried about that. It's Trent, Cancelo, Dean, and Gabriel. It's purely down to you on the Gabriel shout. You talked me into him last week by talking about the set piece threat and how poor Leicester and Palace are. So he's in. So it's 2 5 million defenders, and then it's Salah, Diaz, Kulusevski, Neto, and then Gabriel Jesus has come in because I'm boring, and it's Haaland over Kane. So. I mean, it's fairly template, but there's a couple of players that normally too many people have got. I'm not seeing too many Deans, seeing too many Gabriels, not seeing any Kulusevskis. But yeah, pretty dull, pretty template, but a couple of.
I mean, I think Dean and Kulusevski are the variables, right? Not many players are going to have those two. Kulusevski is fine game week 1 because Richarlison's suspended. Are you worried about that beyond that though? Because
I've been really trying to work out if Richarlison affects Kulusevski, and the more I think about it, the more I just can't really see how he does. Richarlison, I mean, Kulusevski is at risk anyway. I mean, he was at risk last season. You know, they've got Moura there. They've got options at wing back. They can change things around and stuff. I'm not saying he's a nailed on 90-minute player, but I'm just not sure Richarlison really will have that much of an impact on him. He's not going to play on the right, Richarlison. So it'll be Kulusevski coming off and then probably a change in shape for Spurs. But then it's difficult to know how that works because Son and Richarlison are both left-sided players. Yeah, I don't know. The more I think that I want to see it in action, but I think Kulusevski with Southampton at home in the first game definitely going to start.
Yeah.
If he has a good game in that, and I think he will play the majority of matches for Spurs, particularly early on. Richarlison kind of bedding in, and I'm expecting Spurs to get off to a good start. So it gives me two 8 million midfielders in Diaz and Kulusevski, and I think Kulusevski is massively being overlooked now, and I think he could be an option.
Yeah, I mean, if I was picking top 3 differentials for game week 1, Kulusevski would probably be in there because I think he is very overlooked, and his consistency, particularly at home, was really strong, wasn't it?
7% ownership.
Yeah. So if you're backing a Spurs win, which most are, and I'm probably backing a win by 2 to 3 goals, then you think returns are likely. And he could actually turn out to be the biggest returner of the 3, of Kane, Son and Kulusevski. He could be the one. So I think it's a good move for game week 1. I just think that, you'll be worried about team sheets within a couple of weeks. That's the only thing. But
like we've said, it's not a huge amount of weeks to really have to worry about it. If he's out of the team by game week 4, the wild card's probably going to be playing in game week 5 or 6 anyway.
Yeah, and you've got Andreas and Nico anyway, right? He's going to come off the bench at least, isn't he? I guess even if he doesn't start, he's going to get 20 minutes. The only thing I look at there though is there is Saka and Mount. I prefer Saka. I would probably go Saka over Kulusevski.
See, I prefer Odegaard over Saka. That's the way I'm leaning with that as well. Yeah, so
I like Odegaard.
Yeah. I mean, the chat doesn't like Dean.
No, well, I don't like Dean either. I don't know why you wouldn't go Walker or what's wrong with Walker game week 1? Because I mean, they're not signing Cucurella yet, are they?
He is going to sign that. You talk about. I mean, I like Villa's first couple of games. They've got Bournemouth in the first game, Everton then next, Palace in game week 3. I think from a defensive point of view, those are 3 decent games. And at 3% ownership, 3% ownership. That's what I like. I mean, cash is obviously there, much higher, 20% ownership. But out of the 2, it's that kind of backing against effective ownership thing that we talked about earlier. I think Dean is another kind of under the radar pick. He's been good to me, Dean, which is why I think I like him. But I know he's hurt a lot of people over the years.
Yeah, I think there's 5 million options better. I think. I mean, you've got Gabriel, so you're not going to go Zinchenko, but there's Trippier as well that I think is probably stronger. Fixtures, he has got Liverpool, City in the first 5, Trippier, that's the only issue. But going at 1, he could do that. And to be honest, even against tough opposition, he's got set pieces, isn't he? You can argue Dino has as well, but I think Newcastle are a bit stronger defensively than Villa at the moment. That's my take on it, but it is a very hot take based on nothing really having a bit of pre-season.
They're the best takes.
We don't know. We just don't know, do we? So I don't think anyone can say Dean is wrong. I just think there's 1 or 2 ahead of him for me. And I would probably go Saka over Kulusevski myself. But that's because I'm obviously considering Son and Kane. So that's probably... Neto, where do you stand on Neto following the Jimenez injury?
I think it probably makes him a slightly worse option, but I still think he's by far the pick of the sub 6 million midfielders. He's going to be playing up front. He's had a pretty decent pre-season. Wolves have got good fixtures. He's 5-5 in midfield. What else do you want? It's. I'd prefer him up top with Jimenez because we saw last year Jimenez dropping deep and letting players kind of run off him. But I think with the fixtures Wolves have got, I still like him. Not sold.
See, I like him. I don't like Wolves, and I think things aren't great at Wolves. Right, off the pitch, I don't think. I mean, they've made 1 signing so far this season, that's Collins, right? They've let Silva go out on loan. I didn't understand why they had to do that. Why did they let Fabio Silva go out on loan? Right, they kept him last season when he was a year with, he was less experienced last year than he's going to be this season, obviously, right? If anything, you'd think this would be the season they would bring him in more, and they send him out on loan, right? Surely last season was the season
I think they just don't really like him.
Okay, fine. Then surely when you send Fabio Silva out on loan, you've got someone in. You've got to get a striker, right? Yeah. They haven't got any backup to Jimenez.
They've got Juan.
Right, okay. They haven't got any backup to Jimenez, and they've left it. And now Jimenez has got the injury. When really, the minute they you don't send Silva out on loan and not already have a striker lined up to come in, do you? Sure. Yeah. Normally the trigger to send a player out on loan is we've got a player coming in.
Yeah.
But they didn't. They sent him out on loan. Didn't bring anyone in, and now they're in trouble. And that just tells me that something's wrong. Right? Something's wrong at that club for that to happen. Someone's not done their job, or they can't get money together to buy a striker. because, we don't know what it is, but to me that makes me worried about Wolves and the confidence that they will go into the season with. Yeah, pre-season's been all right, but you can't judge anything on pre-season. So I am really worried about Wolves. I know some Wolves fans who think they're going to be in trouble next year.
My counter argument is that in the first 6 games they play 2 promoted teams, Fulham and Bournemouth, and they play Leeds and Southampton.
Yeah.
So I mean that is 4 of the worst teams in the league, really.
Well,
and he's 5-5. You don't need a goal a game.
Yeah,
you need a couple of returns across those games.
He is, in my team, the one I'm least convinced about. And actually, he's the only player who's not in a top team. Like, you've got Dina, but outside of Dina and, you've got Sanchez as well. But most of your players are, 8 of your players are in top 6 teams. In fact, in one of my teams, I've got 10 of my 11 in top teams. Neto, the only one who's not in a top team. So not surprisingly, he's the one I'm going, I want to get rid of.
Position though, I like him. I still like
him.
Do
you?
Yeah, I still like him.
I don't know. I think he's a great player.
He's an out of position 5.5 million midfielder with great fixtures over the first 6. There's what more what more do you want?
Well, you want Wolves to go into the season with 3 or 4 signings and a bit of confidence and feeling like everyone's looking forward to the season.
Have to get
and they're not.
Yeah.
They're leaving it late now, aren't they? They've got a week. Whoever they get in now is not going to play in game week 1. So
hang up top.
I just think if you're a Wolves fan and you're looking at that, we've just let our reserve striker go out on loan, and then you don't sign a forward, and then your only forward gets injured, aren't you going, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
You do. I mean, so
I do agree. I mean, I don't think Wolves are going to have a particularly good season. I don't really like them either, but purely from a FPL midfield 5.5 perspective, there isn't anyone better than Neto. I mean,
you have to
Gordon, go up. Up to 6, even at 6. I mean, you've got Lingard. I don't know how he's going to start. Martinelli's questions over his minutes.
I think I'd be tempted to not have Dino go a 4-5 and go Neto to Martinelli in that team.
No, I'm happy with Neto. I'm going to back him. I'm going to back the bandwagon that is emerging. Do you want to see my second team, or do you want to go?
No, throw your second team up.
Okay, so this is my second team. This is like the more exciting version, because I do appreciate this one is quite boring. This is a 5 at the back with the 5 most attacking defenders in the league. So this is like, because I love the attacking defenders. So this is go for it for the attackers. So this has got Ramsdale in goal, not Sanchez, and then Trent, Robertson, Cancelo, Perisic, because he is a shoot-aholic, that guy. If he does start for Spurs, he's going to be wild. He's going to be, I tell you,
shoot-aholic, did you say?
Shoot-aholic.
So he likes his trainers.
Sorry. Shoot-aholic. He probably does. Footballers do like their shoes, don't they? But he's a wild pick, Perisic. It kind of excites me, because you don't know if he's not going to start, if he's going to come off at 58 minutes, he could bang in a brace. Who knows?
Yeah.
And then it's Chilwell. So that's the 5. So Chilwell could obviously be James, but I Chilwell, again, backing against the ownership. I like him. And then it's Salah, Maddison. I mean, Maddison could be any of the 8 millions. Odegaard, who we've talked about, and Neto, and then Haaland up top. So 5-4-1. No real weak. I mean, this, you talk about top sides. I mean, say you made Maddison, Mount, or Mahrez. There's only one player here from a non-top 6 side, which is Neto. It does excite me. I can't lie.
I like it.
It's an exciting team, and it could well be what I do end up going with. I'd love for Perisic to get some minutes in the next few games, and
you need to see Perisic start. You need to see Perisic start at the weekend, not just come off the bench. He needs to start, and because I'm looking at him as well. If he's one of those, I don't want to go into this weekend thinking, the events of this weekend are going to change all my thinking. I want to avoid doing that. I want to kind of stay as faithful as I can to the couple of teams I've got. But there is a couple of players that you just think, well, if I see that though, if Lingard plays against Valencia for Forest and looks good, I would think, I want to get him in. If Perisic turns up and starts for Spurs, I'll be going,
well, that's it. Yeah, he can turn.
There's a few players, there's a few players like that who I think would sway me. So I like it. I love the Odegaard pick. I think Odegaard's going to have more end product. I think more goals, more assists. I think he's going to take a leap up. The only issue there is you've got Martinelli and Saka who are very good options. Odegaard, though, is certain to start. Martinelli isn't. So
I mean, I'd much rather have Odegaard than Rashford at the same price.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sold on Rashford at all.
Yeah.
Maybe I am kind of biased about that, but I just think I would like with the fixtures Arsenal have got. I think Arsenal are going to be a team on the up this season. I'm liking what I'm seeing from them. I think this new is it Vieira, isn't it, who's come in midfield. I think that boosts Odegaard, pushes him further up, means he can kind of operate in a more of an 8 or into the 10, getting close to the box. On the free kicks, I just think I can't see any way in which he doesn't take a step up this season and be more involved in the final sort of killer balls and having more shots and everything. So, yeah.
What I've seen pre-season is the front three and Odegaard are linking really well. Like the movement of the front three, particularly Martinelli and Jesus with Odegaard. Saka's been all right pre-season. Still think he's the most reliable, but yeah, I really like the way Odegaard's linking up with them in pre-season. And I think the thing with Odegaard, he's a player to get on. I wouldn't consider him unless Arsenal are in really good form. When Arsenal are in really good form, Odegaard is a player to consider. With Saka, he can get you something when Arsenal aren't playing particularly well, right? But I think Odegaard, you need the team to be purring for him to get points. And I think I think they're going to start in really good form, based on what I've seen pre-season. It's just I don't know. Again, I can only speculate on what I've seen. I don't really know because there's no data. I'm just seeing things.
It would be classic Arsenal to lose to Palace in the first game, though, wouldn't it?
I don't think it's an easy game.
No, it's not.
I don't think it's an easy game. But yeah, I like Odegaard. I like this team. And I think you've got to ask yourself, like I'm asking myself now, right? I'm in my whatever season, right? Did you say General's in his 21st season or something like that?
Is he?
Played since. Yeah, it's crazy. I'm in my 16th season, I think, right now. And yes, I do this podcast. And yes, I don't want to come on here with a 3-4 million rank. Right? Of course. I don't. Ideally, I mean, it wouldn't be the end of the world, but I want to have a good season. But at the same time, I want to enjoy the season. I didn't really enjoy last season. I thought for several reasons. One of them being the Salah perma captain. So I'm not gonna put myself in a situation. I don't think I want to put myself in a situation where I'm forever making decisions based on fear next season. Because I think last season I captained Salah 17 times, and often I did it out of fear, not because he was always the best pick. And I think if I got Salah this season, I'd do it again, which is why my team is not going to have him probably. Right? Yeah, put it up. So I've decided to just do that, just to see what happens, right? Because I don't think I've got anything to prove to anybody. I know I had a bad season last season, but I don't think anyone's going to. Maybe people already saying I'm over the hill, but I don't really care. I mean, I want to.
If Nat beats you again, Mark, you're out.
Yeah, I'm out, and that's it. Yeah, probably. So I've decided I'm going to do things a bit different this season and try and play without fear being a factor. So I've got two teams, both without Salah at the moment. This is my first one. I don't think this has changed much from last week. Oh, it has. It's gone from a 5 at the back to a 4 at the back. And the reason why I've done that is what I referred to earlier about I think the early bandwagons are likely to be in midfield. I think, I fear that I'm going to miss a Bailey or a Rashford, right, and need to get on them quick. And I think I don't need to, but I want to. And I think having 5 in midfield gives you the best chance to go on to that. But I may well switch back. We'll see. But at the moment, I'm going Ederson, Cancelo, Trent, Gabriel, Robertson, Martinelli, Son, Diaz, Neto, Saka, Kane. The captaincy I haven't decided yet. It's obviously between Kane and Son. I don't know which way I'm going to go yet. I like that team. It hasn't changed too much from last week. And I'm not set on it, but I'm set on a lot of those players. I tell you the players that aren't going to move now. Cancelo, Trent, Robertson, Martinelli, Son, Diaz, Saka and Kane are all going to stay, I think. I would have thought. So the rest is still in flux. So at the moment, there's probably 3 spots in flux, and whether I go 5-4-1 or 4-5-1 is still in flux. So not too many decisions yet to be made, I wouldn't have thought. I think that's healthy at this point. So yeah, I'm set on about 7 or 8 of those players. I think that's okay. But I don't want to be going into that situation on Friday. I want to be either set on my full 11 or maybe one player or maybe the captaincy. I don't want to be going into Friday with, I could be going 3 or 4 players different, ideally. Right. So let's bring up the second team.
I'll give my thoughts on no Salah in a minute as well.
Oh, right. Do you want to? Yeah, well, he's in. No, he's not in the next team either.
Karen, go for your second one. I'll talk about it in a second.
Yeah, obviously my bench on that one was Olsen. Could be any former link keeper. I'll probably change that. Nico, Archer, and Planche, the 2-4-5 forwards. I don't expect to call on my 2 forwards very much, but Nico will be all right after a few weeks, I think. But yeah, the second team, still waiting for that to come up on YouTube because of the lag. And it's up now. So this is a change. Not totally set on Ederson, but I am set on having 2 City defenders, either Ederson and Cancelo, or as I'm shown in this team, Cancelo and Walker. So this team is Ramsdale, Cancelo, Trent, Walker, Robertson, Martinelli, Son, Diaz, Lingard, Neto, Saka, and Kane. So what I've done there is free up 0.5 to get rid of Neto for Lingard, and I've got that 0.5 by going Ederson to Ramsdale and swapping Gabriel and Walker. So I've still got the Arsenal cover, I've still got the 2 City defenders, but I've swapped the personnel. I quite like Ramsdale. I mean, I'm either going to go Ramsdale or Ederson in goal. I'm not going to go down to a 4-5. It's either one of those two. I don't mind Walker early on. I think Cucurella would have to come in tomorrow to factor in the first couple of games, because I think Pep, as we know, eases players in. I just don't see him signing Cucurella and throwing him in game week 2, 3, or maybe 4. Right. So I think Walker's good for the start of the season.
I really hope we keep Cucurella.
You might
really
keep. I think it might even go up to the window.
I think it will.
Go up to. Yeah, it might go right up to deadline. Yeah. So I don't think City are going to look elsewhere yet. I think that if that wrangle goes on, it could rumble on for well into the up against the end of the window. So I think Walker's all right, but yeah, so this is a possible team. The other thing I'm looking at is going back to 5 at the back, and Perisic being a factor in that, because I do like him. So if I saw him start at the weekend and him to be into my mind, I would consider going 5 at the back again, and then Andreas would come in for Lingard, and I'd spend more. Nico would go to Perisic, maybe a 5-5 in this kind of setup. So yeah, again, the core is set, I think, and I am probably going to start without Salah. I'm weakening by the moment, aren't I? Now it will
no. You are starting without Salah. You've posted it on Twitter. You've come on this podcast. There's no backing out now.
Yeah, no, I think it's all right. I mean, so I don't, and that's not because I think Salah's going to flop, and it's not because I think Son is necessarily going to outscore Salah in game week 1. It's more that mentally I don't want to just have Salah sitting there as my captain week in, week out. And yeah, I know people are going to captain Haaland game week 2, but if he flops against Bournemouth, say he gets an assist and they win 4-0 and he gets an assist and he goes off after an hour or whatever, you're going to go, well, I'm captaining Salah now every week until Haaland shows me more. And then I just don't want to do that. I don't want to. I think the captaincy is something that I want to play with this year. I want to enjoy the captaincy, and I didn't really enjoy it last year. 17 times captaining Salah, it was very dull. And I just, I think the captaincy is such a key decision. I want it to count for me. And so often you're captaining Salah and going, yes, Salah returned. Oh, it doesn't really mean anything, but at least I didn't lose rank. It's like, I don't know. I don't necessarily want that. And I know the flip side is, oh bugger, I haven't even got Salah and he's absolutely destroyed me, but I'll take that on the chin. I'm willing to have a go at it anyway. There you go. Say what you like.
Well, my opinion is unchanged. I think Salah is just needed. If the games were worse to start the season, I would say there's a case, but the fact is they play their first 7 games are all probably going to be quite comprehensive wins. Fulham, Palace, United, Bournemouth, Newcastle, Everton, Wolves. Like they're all potential 3+ goal matches. The fact Liverpool have got a new look side. Salah's the consistent one. I don't need to go on about the kind of merits of him. I mean, the problems with your structure is that you can't move for him. I can't see any way. If you lock in this team, that's it. You're not getting him in unless you're wildcard.
If I go Edison's that 1 million bank, right? So I look at that and go, if I really need to move to Salah, I'd have to do it in 2 moves. Yeah, of course. But Edison's the 1 million, isn't it? That's why I would go Edison to a 4-5 earlier than the wildcard.
You're most likely going to be moving for a City attacker in game week 2. So that's game week 2. That's game week 2 out.
I'm not going to panic. If Salah gets a hat trick at Fulham, I'm not going to go, I've got to get him, because it wouldn't be it wouldn't be unexpected that he would do something like that. I'm kind of doing it with knowing that could happen. I'm not sitting here thinking, oh no, I'm absolutely certain Salah's not going to do well. I'm not doing that. I'm going thinking Salah's going to do well. It's going to hurt me, but I'll try and compensate in other ways. And I think I'll enjoy it.
They got 2 promoted teams in the first 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I know. I
don't like it.
I know it's crazy, right? But it depends on how you want to play, doesn't it? Right? I just don't want to. I know every week we'll be doing BlackBox. I'll be going, who's your captain? You'll be going Salah, right? And I'll be going, well, I don't know who it's going to be. It could be
Lingard.
It could be, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to have Lingard captain, but I'm always going to have 2 heavy hitters, and it's going to be one of those 2. And I'll see how it goes. And then wildcard game week 5 or 6. And then if I have to get Salah, because otherwise I'm going to plunge to like 5 million or something, then maybe I'll move then.
I know what you're saying. I remember when you went against Aguero a few years ago. That went well for you, didn't it?
I don't know. Don't even remember. This is my point. This is my point. I don't even remember, right? So does it really matter? And it's like, we'll see what happens. And I think in a way...
This is amazing. Does it even matter?
It's good.
Does it even matter? You're having almost a breakdown before the season's even started.
I'm not, I think, and Luke would say the best way of winning it is to do things like this, right? So if anything, I'm starting with a strategy that's more likely to win it because I'm not jumping on Salah and captaining him every week, which is what the majority are going to do. Now, it probably will go wrong, but there's a chance it won't. There's a chance that Son outscores him and I captain Son every week and I do really well. I don't know. Nobody knows. It's likely that the odds are stacked against me based on what we've seen. But equally, Son and Kane have looked good and they've been good under Conte. And if I've got one of those as my captain and others are jumping on Salah every week, then maybe it will work out. I don't know.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not like massively slating it. It's not for me at all. I think it's incredibly risky. But yeah, it is about kind of, trying to do things a bit different and you could be the person who is in the kind of top 1K, or you could be 6 million. It's gonna be interesting.
Yeah,
it's gonna be exciting.
Yeah, I think that's probably the way. I don't know. We'll see. And I think it'll make for a more interesting season. And I think perhaps I'm in a luxurious position where I can do this, and it's not going to it's not going to be the end of the world. I'm not making a living out of FPL where I've got to go on YouTube every day and go, oh, there's my team and I'm ranked 5 million in the world. If I was doing that, if I was Slippers, if I was Focal, if I was Mate, I probably wouldn't be doing this because I couldn't risk it. Then because my credibility would be in question, and that's I make a living out of it. I don't do that anymore. I can have fun with this game, and this is my 16th, 17th season. So let's give it a go and see where it takes me.
Oh, all these are such good sound bites for later for later on in 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, and I'm not. Don't get me wrong. I mean, if people who are not playing FPL before, if you're in your first season, I'm not advising you do this. I would advise getting Salah, right? Because that is definitely the safest, low risk option, and then build from a solid start, etc. Right? That's what I would advise doing. But I've just decided, no, I'm going to go for it differently because I didn't enjoy that no decision captaincy that I suffered a lot last season, and it might be that I have to move to him with the wild card, and then I go back. I end up in that anyway. But let's give it 5 or 6 weeks and see what happens. Is my take on it. I will say that I'm in New York on a rooftop watching Liverpool play Wolves at 3:00 UK time. That'll be 7:00 US time, maybe a bit later. So I'm in New York on a rooftop. If Salah's done damage to me till then and he gets a hat-trick against Wolves, I can just throw myself off the roof. So it's fine.
Oh, bloody hell, that's taking a dark
I don't know how Billy would get home, but at least I'd have ended it all. No, I obviously wouldn't do that. But you know what I mean? It's like I do look at it and think, it's going to be an absolute disaster, and I'm going to be in New York watching Salah bang a hat-trick, and I'm going to be sitting there surrounded by
I love the
American FPL fans with Billy going, Dad, are you all right? And I'm be like, I just need a little rest.
I just love that 1 minute you're light and breezy, I'm going to play differently, and the next you're planning your own suicide. It's quite a
that's how we roll on FPL BlackBox now. I'm not planning anything as such, but that's very dark of me. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
What's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is I'm on here a few weeks looking silly. It wouldn't be the first time.
The best that could happen.
What do you think? No, the best
for
that could
me.
happen is Son and Kane fly. And
No,
then
I mean
it's
for
like,
me.
oh, okay.
I don't
From
care
your
about you,
perspective,
God.
thanks very nice. Thanks very much.
It's very nice.
Fair enough.
It's late. It is late. You can tell it's late, can't you?
Yeah, I'm delirious. Yeah. Anyway, good. There we go.
We can either call it there, or we've got a couple of questions we could rattle through. We could probably rattle through them quite quickly if you want.
Go on then. There's 1,400 watching, so that's really nice. Hit the like and subscribe at this point. I guess 1,400. Thanks for sticking with us all this time and listening to me rant on about.
I think it does show when people do like the stream, the numbers do jump up. It just shows that the algorithm likes it when people like the stream. So that is why we kind of encourage people to like it. Because
I think people have gone on Twitter going, Mark's making a fool of himself. You've got to watch this.
Oh yeah, that's probably quite likely.
Yeah.
Right, let's take a couple of questions. We don't normally take super chats on the main show, but we have had one, so we'll do that. But that's not an encouragement to do them because we won't normally answer them. But we'll do kind of short answers, right? We won't do big discussions, because I've got some other ones on another screen. Omkar Pereb says Haaland and Kulusevski or Kane and Mahrez. Good question.
Haaland and Kulusevski or Kane and Mahrez?
Yeah.
I think it much depends on what we see in the Community Shield. I think here. I think if Mahrez starts and looks decent, I would probably go Kane and Mahrez.
Assuming they all start. Let's say they all start game weeks 1 and 2. Which two would you pick? I'd go Haaland and Kulusevski, I think.
Would you?
Yeah.
I think it depends what we see from Haaland. Right. If he looks like he's settled and he looks like he's going to be getting lots of opportunities, then yeah, probably. But it's a big if, isn't it? So I think you can't make that decision until you've seen something of the way City are going to set up with Haaland. I don't think we've seen anywhere near enough yet. And I don't know if Haaland's going to start game week 1 yet. So I think in a way, right now, I would say Mahrez is more likely to start than Haaland. So we need a bit more information.
Yeah, I mean, my draft earlier had Kulusevski and Haaland, so I think it shows. Right, because I could have had Kane.
Yeah. Okay.
I think. Okay, so these are some questions from Twitter. So again, if you haven't followed FPL BlackBox on Twitter, you missed out because you could have asked a question. I took all the questions that people asked, so you could have had a free one. Let's go quick answers on these. At FPL_Ronnie, Martinelli, Rashford or Grealish?
Martinelli, Rashford or Grealish? Martinelli.
Interesting. I'd go Grealish. I'd back him in the first couple of games. I'm not sold on Rashford, and I could keep saying.
What's Martinelli done wrong?
I mean, I love Martinelli. Don't get me wrong, but I think there are massive concerns about Smith Rowe, more than ever. I think he could easily play, and I think with Jesus being able to operate kind of across the different places, I don't know. There's just a bit more because Jesus isn't going to take Saka's place on the right. So could we see him maybe moving to the left? I don't know. Maybe it's overthinking it. I think Martinelli's a good option, but I would pick Grealish out of those three.
He's definitely going to get subbed in every game. He's going to get limited to 65 minutes probably, even when he starts. So he's not long term, but I think in the short term, Arsenal looks so good at the moment, and what I've seen, that I favour him right now.
Yep. At mbison22, things aren't right at Chelsea. Tuchel's been critical of his players in pre-season. Isn't even sure if they've got enough defenders to play back five. Does this mean that Mendy, James and Chilwell are a hard avoid? You didn't have him in any of your sides, any Chelsea defenders, I don't think. I had Chilwell with my big at the back one. But yeah, definitely going off them a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think they're essential at all. I think they're definitely a wild card, wait and see. I mean, if they're going to play four at the back, then how far forward are Chilwell and James going to be? And I think they are going to start with four at the back. I do. Until they've got another defender in that is good enough to allow them to switch systems. So Chilwell's got Alonso as a threat. I know he's not much of a threat, but Alonso could play 1 in 4, 1 in 5, which will be really annoying because it's likely to be a weaker team he comes in for. So I don't think, and Mendy, I prefer Ramsdale at 5 million, to be honest.
Yeah.
So no, I think they're not a hard avoid, but it's not the end of the world if you go for one of them. But I don't think they're anywhere near the status they were a couple of weeks ago.
No,
when
I agree.
When it looked like Chelsea were going to get the 2 centre-backs signings through the door, and they haven't. They've only got the one. So, yeah. And Tuchel's comments did worry me.
Me too. Fixtures on. I mean, Everton and in Game Week 1, Leeds in Game Week 3, and Southampton in Game Week 5. They are really nice fixtures. But I mean, I was 100% sure I was going to start with one of James or Chilwell. Now I'm much less sure. FPL Grey Hair asked, why does Neto look like Nasser Chadley in the thumbnail?
Because he's a trap, just like Nessa Chadley.
That's a good answer. Yeah. That's a good answer. He does actually look a lot like him, if you just put it on the screen now. Yeah, he does look a lot like him. Don't really answer it, though. League code. Yeah, I've read the league code earlier. It's on the screen. It is 3V7DQ9. How's that?
Very good.
Thank you.
Very good.
Bowen. Is Bowen being overlooked at week at L? Haven't seen him in a single team. It's the 8.5 price tag, isn't it? That's the problem. Should have made him 8.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a problem. And obviously the City fixture, game week 1. And I think there were a couple of players I think are overlooked because of fixtures. Zaha's the other. Right? I think if you end up being forced to play your wild card early, like say you did something mad, like you didn't go Salah, and then you have to play the wild card, like you'd be an idiot. But if you have done that, then players like Bowen and Zaha are pretty good to get on early because if people are going to play the wild card 5 or 6, you might be able to pick up some early returns because actually after the first couple of games, their fixtures aren't that bad. Palace is really turned around. West Ham's get better as well, and Bowen and Zaha I think are very strong midfield options who are very strong differentials. Probably just not in game week 1. So yeah, I think he is overlooked. The only trouble with Bowen is that West Ham go into Europe, after 5 game weeks. I think it is Europe comes in, and then West Ham have got the new striker in though, so they should have enough to rest players in European games in the early stages. So hopefully that doesn't affect Bowen too much. So definitely overlooked, and definitely if I was playing a wild card really early, he'd be on my list to bring in.
Yeah, he got like what? Was it 30 goal involvements or nearly 30 goal involvements last season? It was something.
Yeah. I think it was
ridiculous.
17 goals and 11 assists or something.
I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable. Like, is he going to hit 206 points again? Yeah, 19 goal involvements he got last season. Absolutely crazy. And he missed a chunk as well from injury. But yeah,
19 goal involvements, more than that.
29.
29. Yeah, 29.
I said 29, didn't I?
Yeah. No, you said 19. You took 10 off it. You robbed him of 10 goal involvements.
One of us is delirious.
Yeah.
Yeah, being overlooked, but I think probably sensibly at the start, but definitely going to be a factor for us, I think, at some point.
Yeah.
At FPL Witty Name, who's in the chat, what do you think of triple City defence and Kane versus Haaland and double City defence? Triple City defence, bit inflexible, isn't it?
Yeah, it is because like you've got to think that Haaland or De Bruyne could go off to the point where you really want them, and then you've got to get rid of a City defender, haven't you? And I mean, I'm going in with 2. I wouldn't go in with 3 though, because I mean, while it could deliver for you, I think there's a high chance you're going to want a City attacker at some point, and then you're faced with having to make the 2 transfers. So I just wouldn't do it. Haaland and a double City defence if you really need to go Haaland game week 1, which I don't think you do. But yeah.
I agree. Foden. Is Foden being overlooked from at FPL_shenanigans? Again, I think he is, but this time I think, same as Bob, but good reason, right? We don't know his role in the team. He hasn't had a pre-season. There's other good options at City in Grealish and Mahrez.
He hasn't had a pre-season. It's the biggest thing, isn't it? 50 minutes he's had, I think, so far. And even when he is going to be in rotation with Mahrez and Grealish, isn't he? Like those 3 are going to move, I would have thought, around the 3 roles, and even Palmer could come into that to make it a 4. So I think we're anticipating the Foden's either going to play left and share that with Grealish, or he's going to rotate in that role and on the right with Mahrez. We don't really know. Right? It could be that Mahrez looks locked in for most games and Foden's just going to rotate with Grealish. So in which case Mahrez is a better option, I think. So right now we don't know enough to commit to Foden. We might do within 3 or 4 game weeks, and that's when we can bring him in, I think. Well, bring him into our thinking. Not
I think there's so many players I'd rather have at 8 million than Foden.
Yeah. At the moment.
At the moment, yeah, absolutely. It could definitely be a factor. At Hound _of Justice, we've answered his question about James, I think, but what about Aronson to end the podcast? Aronson at Leeds, you like it?
I like him, yeah, I do. I think he's one that he could be a really good signing for them, and he's playing in the 10. He's playing in the Pablo Hernandez role, and he looks a good creative player. Doubts about whether he's got the physicality to cope, but he looks like he's doing all right pre-season. He's looking lively. I think they've got a good player there. Paid a fortune for him, so he should be. Someone Jesse Marsh knows very well. I think at 5'5", he's could be someone who emerges. Yeah, so he's one to watch out for. I'm not sure I'd move straight away. I mean, unless I was a Leeds fan, I wouldn't move straight away. Even if I was a Leeds fan, I probably wouldn't. But it's like me and Lingard, isn't it? Like you want to get the player in for your team. So yeah, I really like him. I think he's definitely one to watch.
I don't.
Okay, fair enough.
Not so much. I mean, he's a 5'5" midfielder, and other than Neto, I don't think there is a huge amount of option. But if I'm being completely honest, I can't see Leeds being a factor for us. I think.
You don't trust Leeds under Marsh?
Not at all. Not at all. And losing Phillips is absolutely huge for them. Again, they can all change around, but the thing is, they're early. Their good fixtures are early. So they'll need to show stuff really quickly for us to consider him. Otherwise, it's going to be too late, and then their fixtures turn. And you're not going to get him. So I think probably less of an impact for us. But yeah, one to look out for. Interesting signing.
Yeah, I mean, Bamford's got to be scoring goals for Amundsen to be a factor, I think. And we don't know if that's going to happen. I like Bamford as a player, but has he recovered fully from the injury? Is he going to break down again? And that's
I mean, the interesting thing would be if Amundsen does get something in game week 1. And then, then you've got Southampton, Brighton, Everton, Brentford, Forest all on the horizon. And, we could see people moving from Neto if he blanks, for example, or, maybe even a Martinelli if he's rotated. He could become a factor quite quickly. My point is he's going to have to be a factor quickly for us to go there. Awesome. That's it.
Okay.
Mark,
all right. Marvellous.
2 hours 16, even though we thought this would be about an hour. Sounds about right, doesn't it?
Yeah. That's fine. I'll edit my cough out and edit that section where I wasn't going to go Salah, so I can go Salah and then pretend that never happened. Brilliant.
I don't think the chat's going to let you forget it. They weren't too happy. My camera was all right in the end as well. It stopped cutting out. Which was
yeah, it's all fine. It's getting warm in here, though. That's for sure. So we better end it at that point. Just to you to do the likes and
we've done a couple of these so far, but we'll do one final plug. Thank you everyone for watching. I will just put the Fest graphic up because that is happening. Oh, there is no Fest graphic. The Fest graphic hasn't come up. Oh, no.
Oh, there you go. Oh, well. Talk about Fest instead. I'll be at Fest revealing my Game Week 1 lineup and revealing I haven't got Salah live in front of a few hundred FPL managers who will no doubt be laughing at me. So that's probably worth turning up for, isn't it?
Definitely worth it. But it's going to be a great night. I'm going to be there as well. Loads of people who you'll know. Focal, I think, is going. Raptor. Lots of the big YouTubers will all be there as well. So yeah, it should be a good laugh. Sorry, the graphic isn't there. I thought it would be there, but it wasn't.
It's under. You've got to move it down on that. Never mind. Right. Technicalities of OBS.
I'll just blame you.
No, but it's 5th of August in Waterloo in London. Tickets available. Just Google Fancy Football Fest. You'll find the website address. It's 20 quid, and it's going to be fun.
Doors open at 4 p.m. next Friday. Can't wait.
Indeed.
And the final thing is just, we've said it a few times, but make sure you smash the like button if you haven't already. 529 likes, 1,200 people watching. We really appreciate it. Really appreciate all your comments and support and everything. And we're looking forward to the season getting started, or at least Mark is, until Salah gets a hat-trick in Game Week 1.
What have I done?
What have you done? It's locked. There's no going back now.
Good night for me.
Good night, everybody. See you next week.